Hi, everybody. Special guest on the show today, CEO of Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, who has been exposing lies and propaganda for years and years now. You're probably seeing his face now because of what he's exposing behind COVID-19. James, thank you so much for being on Will and Amala Live.
Great to be with you guys.
We got to get into these Fauci leaks. We'll get into some stuff on your book, but all of this, I mean, Dr. Fauci, under oath, has come and said, oh, we don't know about gain-of-function research. We know nothing about that. I mean, in testifying about this, and you have now just released new documents to show that all of these things that he was saying are absolutely lies. It's hogwash. Talk about those documents that you guys have seen.
Yeah, well, last week, a source came to us with documents inside the Department of Defense, literal Pentagon papers. This was DARPA is a division of the Department of Defense, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And in these documents, which were authored by a Marine Corps Major Fellow at DARPA, so highly credible military documents, showed that this EcoHealth Alliance group approached the Department of Defense, and the Defense Department rejected it on research on gain of function on bat-borne coronaviruses because it was too dangerous, precisely for the situation we find ourselves in today. The documents also allege that Anthony Fauci, who was the head of NIAID at the time, authorized proceeding with this research. So these documents would seem to indicate Anthony Fauci lied under oath. Anthony Fauci was grilled about this in the Senate last week, brought the documents up, in fact, authenticated the documents, but basically attacked this Marine Corps major. So we just want Fauci to release more documents, or frankly, if he won't, Project Veritas will.
As you guys should. I mean, there is so much out there that this guy has lied about. He has been in there since 1984. Right? And what has happened to public health in this country? It is diminished. I mean, we are behind Costa Rica, and the amount of money that we spend on pharmaceuticals is some of the highest in the entire world. Yet, we were once one of the healthiest nations, now to one of the most unhealthy nations throughout the world. And this is because of people like Dr. Fauci. Have you seen anything else? Are you expecting any other whistleblowing about this man and anything else that's happened with the pandemic and what they've known?
Well, definitely. I mean, you can't question the orthodoxy, the narrative. We live in a country and we live in a world, and this is what I talk about in this book, American Muckraker, a world where the FBI and the New York Times are acting in concert, where pharmaceutical companies, it comes out yesterday, a document from the Department of Justice, Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch, released a document saying that the New York Times, the Pfizer Pharmaceutical was in communication with the FBI about me. Now, why the hell is the Federal Bureau of Investigation talking to pharmaceutical companies about journalists? And where's the fourth estate? So we need people on the inside. And by the way, there are a lot of good people in the government. We always criticize these administrative agencies. I would say there's a lot of, probably the majority of them are decent people, but they can't do anything about it. And the people in the Marines aren't going to blow the whistle. They took an oath. So, but what this Marine Corps major told us on the record, by the way, and he was not the source of the documents. There was another source. We just contacted him for comment. And Joe Murphy, the Marine fellow at DARPA, told us, hey, there's a lot of good people, James, inside the government, and hopefully they too do the right thing. Next week, Will, we have another story, follow up to this one, about these 5-year-old kids, 5 to 11 years old, getting the vaccine. Blockbuster, bombshell video showing the effects on children. And by the way, people think, well, this is an anti-vax thing. Well, let me tell you something. The people who are pro-vax are going to be more outraged by our revelations coming than these anti-vaxxers.
The narrative is collapsing. The narrative is collapsing.
It is. And I want to ask you, why do you think this is happening? Because you're really pointing a light on really the scope of this. You have big pharmaceutical companies working with agencies of our government, the FBI, the DOJ, working with our media corporations. Why is this happening, and what is their goal here, do you think?
Well, I think I wrote a chapter in this book called Power, and it's a tale as old as time. Power tends to corrupt, as Lord Acton reminds us, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you have journalism decimated because the newspapers have all fallen away and tech now controls the means of distributing information, you have a couple, Washington Post, New York Times, that's about it. And they've gotten too cozy with their sources inside the government. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. There's always been this tension in journalism between access to the information and being adversarial. I think we strike that balance pretty well at Veritas because we use hidden cameras, so we don't have such a conflict. But you've had this problem in the media where they're funded by Pfizer Pharmaceutical at CNN, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer. And at ABC News, which slashed its investigative budgets, now they sell comic books and Disney products. They're owned by Disney. You had them spike the Jeff Epstein story a couple of years ago because they didn't want to jeopardize their sources inside the British royal family. Now look how Prince Andrew's doing. Journalism is dead. And the only way for us to revive it is for citizens, you and I, the people watching this broadcast, who work for the Department of Justice, who work for a pharmaceutical company, people like Melissa at Pfizer, blew the whistle in September and gave us emails. And the emails written by Vanessa Gelman, the senior director at Pfizer, said they were lying to their own customers. They were trying to hide the vaccine was using fetal cells in the development. And the whole point of journalism is to make public what powerful people want hidden. And that's what we need citizens to do. This book tells you how to do it. It's going to require some struggle, some sacrifice, some suffering, but you're going to suffer no matter what. We just ask you do it for the right cause.
Yeah, I mean, with all this stuff with Fauci and big pharma and what's going on there, I mean, Fauci will take the drug patents, sell them to universities, right? And then he splits the patents with them and then walks them through the FDA approval process. And then he's able to profit off this, right? And you're talking about mainstream media and how they don't actually represent the people. The media are supposed to be the people to look at something like this and hold these people accountable and say, how can they get away with this? How can they get away with all the lies and all the terrible things that they have done? But the mainstream media, the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, I mean, these people are essentially controlled. How did these mainstream institutions that at one time were supposed to be the arbiters of truth, that were supposed to keep the elites at bay, how did they become the elite themselves?
That is a great question. It's been about 30 years in coming. You look back to people we learned about in high school, Upton Sinclair, right? He wrote the book about the jungle, the meat packing industry. Even he was attacked by the media. I read about that. People don't realize. Now, he was a socialist. He aimed to hit them in the head, but he hit them in the stomach instead. But I think it's a lot of economics. Like I said, there's been a consolidation of media. I think it's fear. I think it's shared politics to an extent. But you have a harmony between the Fourth Estate and government. And I was raided by the FBI in November. They took my phones. And within minutes of the feds leaving my apartment building, again, I haven't been charged with the crime. This is a whole unique story, but a source sent me Ashley Biden's diary, the daughter of Joe Biden. I did not publish it. The feds came coming to my home, and within minutes of me being taken out of handcuffs, the feds just executing a warrant against my home, taking my phones, I get a text message. You know who it's from? The New York Times. And somehow a national security reporter named Mike Schmidt knows the document I'm holding in my hand. How does he know that? But not for sources, people familiar with the matter, inside the Southern District of New York. And you know what? They should be ashamed of themselves. Ben Smith at the New York Times defended me. The ACLU defend me. And this paper of record whose slogan was in 1896, operate without fear or favor. Journalists cannot operate in favor of certain institutions. And they lecture me about ethics when they work with and in concert with law enforcement agencies. This is not how it should be. But I think we're winning. I'm very hopeful. I'm not cynical, Will. I think we can be successful, but we have to deal with this fear issue. We have to get citizens to not be afraid. And I cannot convince you to do that. I cannot philosophize you to have courage. The only way, I think, is for people to go out and do it, set the example, and that in turn will inspire others to come forward.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of with Roger Stone and the FBI working with CNN when it came to that and breaking the exclusive story. I mean, these people have, it seems like, no soul. They're totally fine with going and ruining people's lives if it means they're going to get ratings and run the narrative.
Yeah, and we've been seeing a lot of these news outlets saying they no longer care about objectivity. They don't care about the truth. They care about the narrative. They care about propaganda. And we're seeing reports of their ratings tanking and people like you and Joe Rogan rising in viewership and people watching. Are you seeing people that once would have looked at Project Veritas and scoffed it off sort of gaining more trust in the reporting that you're doing?
Absolutely. Yes. You're not going to convince everybody, right? You're always worried about those 2 to 5% on the extreme of the spectrum. Certainly you're not going to convince them. But I think the vast majority of people were outraged after the raids against me. We had the Society of Professional Journalists come out. We had the ACLU. Will, if I had told you the ACLU a year ago was going to defend me, you thought it would be a crackpot. But what they tend to do, especially people on the left, is they overplay their hand. They push things too far. And then this pendulum kind of swings. And I think journalism is about forging consensus. It's about exposing facts that we can all agree are wrong. You mentioned ratings. We did an expose on CNN. A whistleblower came out and recorded Charlie Chester at the network in April, saying they put the death toll, COVID death numbers on the screen at CNN because they want more people to die. It helps with ratings. To quote Charlie Chester, "Why can't those numbers be higher? We need those death numbers on the screen. We need more death." So you talk about having a conscience, whether it's narcissism or sociopathy. I'm not a psychologist, but what type of human being do you have to be to put death numbers on the screen and say we need to inflate those numbers? There's a crisis of conscience in media, and people are waking up. I'm extremely optimistic. I know that we can prevent society's collapse, but we got to have courage. We cannot be worried about losing our pensions and our mortgages. There's more to life than worrying about material things. And you see that in the eyes of our whistleblowers who come forward. There's a lot of people out there that are doing this.
You know, what did Winston Churchill say? He said that courage is the most important virtue because that's the virtue that all the other virtues rely on, right? And it truly is the most important thing. People do have to be brave in this moment. And James, I mean, you are what many would call a hero. The things that you are doing, exposing things that are going on. You started this. I mean, I was just reading Andrew Breitbart's book, Righteous Indignation, and he has a whole chapter where he goes through the Acorn, everything you were doing with him then back in the day. I mean, the humble beginnings of that story to now be with the whistleblowers that you have now. It's truly an incredible thing. Everyone needs to support James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. Tell people a little bit about the book and also how they can find it and get their copy.
Well, this book took me 5 years to write. It has some 800 footnotes in it. I tried to patrol the entire history of ethics and privacy because people say that we lie, we deceive, we go undercover, we record people without them knowing. I really explore those themes. At the end of the day, it's not about ethics. It's about what you find out. They don't like our findings. A great example of that is David Daleiden being raided by Kamala Harris, who's now the Vice President of the United States. She was the Attorney General of your state of California. She raided the guy who broke the Planned Parenthood body parts story, baby body parts, with a SWAT team. Of course, they would never do that to someone exposing animal cruelty with hidden cameras. So it's really about power and propaganda. It's about cloaking these things with moral arguments. The first chapter of this book is called Suffering. I quote Solzhenitsyn. I talk about the pain, the trauma. Even speaking sort of personally, I was arrested in 2010 in New Orleans. I was eventually vindicated. The raid against me in November. It was terrifying for a minute, and I had to remind myself that that's kind of the point, isn't it? To intimidate us. And I talk about sort of personally what you have to endure, but at the end of the day. You got to do the right thing. You got to follow your conscience in this life. The alternative is much worse. You might preserve certain material things, but if you don't follow your conscience, how can you live with yourself? That's how a lot of people feel. In fact, a lot of my whistleblowers feel that way. And I think that they're happier for it. And there is life after whistleblowing. In fact, with Go Give Send Go now, people have raised $500,000 to support their work in the future. So yeah, it's a very personal book, but it's also a very academic book, and it's a how-to guide on how to do journalism in clown world.
Amazing, James. I truly want to commend you for the work that you're doing. You are not only a brave person, but creating brave people on a day-to-day basis with the work that you do, and I urge everybody to go and get a copy of American Muckraker and support the work that Project Veritas is doing. Again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to seeing you.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Will and Amala Live. Again, Amala is not here, so it's just Will, but we do have a very special guest on the show, Natalie Winters, who is a reporter for the National Pulse. The National Pulse is a website, news organization that actually just recently I've been really getting into, reading all their articles, checking it every morning for the latest scoop on what's going on. Before we get into that, guys, remember you can go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You can get Will and Amala Live on there. You can rate it 5 stars. You can download the podcast. And it's been amazing to see how many of you guys have been actually going on there, listening to it every day, downloading it. It means the world that you guys are supporting the show that way. Remember, if you're here on YouTube or Facebook, like the video, comment down below your thoughts, and share it with your friends. So anyway, Natalie, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so people probably, they might have seen your articles or might have seen you on War Room. I was listening to War Room, Steve Bannon's show. This was a couple of months ago. And they said, oh, we're bringing Natalie Winters on. And I was like, is this the same Natalie Winters that I knew like 4 years ago from Prager Force? And then I heard you and I was shocked. And I was like, it is the same Natalie Winters. So tell people a little bit about who you are and how you got to this position.
Sure, a lot has changed, I think, since we last spoke. But for people who don't know, when I was in high school, so believe it or not, I am from Los Angeles, but somehow I managed to make it out as conservative. I was very involved in Prager Force. I was part of the student ambassador program. I remember I've been to your offices, your headquarters several times. I participated in a bunch of events, got to meet some really, really amazing people, yourself included, through the program. And I really attribute a lot of the, I would say, success that I've had in the realm of journalism to my early days back when I was affiliated with PragerU, in the sense that the videos that I watched really helped me gain, I think, a theoretical and really, I mean, philosophical understanding of a lot of the values that undergird my conservative beliefs, because I'm sure, as anyone who's listening right now knows, you don't really get that in today's version of academia, though it's barely that. But PragerU, I think, was really a formative experience for me. I know I met a lot of people who I still talk to today, but I'm still actually a college student, so I'm finishing up at the University of Chicago. I have about a year left, but concurrently, while being a student, which I'm sure many people know, especially with COVID-19, it's not that hard to do your classes since it's all remote anyways. I've worked as an investigative reporter for an outlet called the National Pulse, focusing primarily on how the Chinese Communist Party really infiltrates and just gets their evil, evil hands into every aspect and every corner of American society, from academia to media, even to our politicians. And through that, I've been fortunate to go on a lot of different shows, like you mentioned, War Room, I frequent, but I really try to focus on just this corruption that I think one sees every single day very blatantly going on in Washington, D.C., all through the Beltway, all across this country. And my thesis, my theory of the case is that the Chinese Communist Party is responsible for a lot of it.
Amen to that. Yeah, I was looking at, I sent this to you the other day. I was looking at old pictures from like 5 years ago when I was still in college, and I guess you were in high school still. And I was like, wow, like how far we've come since then. I know I look much better back then. I've gotten fat now too. So it's all gone worse. But to be an investigative journalist while you're still in college, and especially to the degree that you're doing it, I mean, these are massive geopolitical issues that take a lot of research. It's not just something where you see a Twitter headline and write something up about it on your website. Like this is a big deal. Especially if you guys watching have seen any of the articles that she's done or National Pulse has done, like these are real investigative things. How did you get into being someone accomplishing that and not just another kind of run of the mill type of, college journalist?
Yeah, well, I think part of it was my kind of personal aversion to what journalism has become today. And I don't just mean the typical critique that you hear that journalism is all about, just fitting an agenda, pushing an agenda, trying to make a narrative. But I think especially on the conservative side of media, there are a lot of people who go into politics, go into media with the intent to, write op-eds and share their opinions and their feelings. And for me, I just didn't really like that style of journalism because I think there was just such a wide open, for lack of a better word, market for true investigative reporting. And I'm sure we'll get into all the ways that Beijing has compromised a lot of America's top, although I use that word lightly, top journalists. So I was very fortunate, although much to, I would say, the detriment of the country, that there really, really was a wide open field for journalists who wanted to focus on the Chinese Communist Party and how they really exploit and subvert all aspects of America, all the way from kindergarten classrooms to college classrooms to, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So that was how I really got into it because, like I said, no one else was doing it. And I've been fortunate to have worked for War Room, which is Steve Bannon's podcast, before I ever started doing media publicly. And just through listening to his show and really being an adherent to his worldview. And I'll even say I grew up listening to Dennis Prager's radio show. I think I was blessed to really understand the critical point that we are at right now in terms of Western civilization and really the future of the West. And I think so many of these questions related to civil liberties, freedom, heck, even the ability to just, go outside your house and go to the supermarket if you don't have 18 vaccines and 12 boosters. A lot of this debate, this dilemma, I think this fundamental erosion of the freedoms that, I've grown up and am very fortunate to have, but we're kind of seeing slip away right now. I think that there's really, really a close relationship between that development, that trend, and the Chinese Communist Party's continued rise and ascension on the global stage. So that was why I thought it was worthy of focusing on, and I'm very glad that I did.
I find anyone who listened to Dennis Prager as a kid always does well in their life. Dennis Prager's
Pro
War
tip,
Room.
yes.
Yeah, pro tip, if you have kids, make them listen to Dennis Prager's Happiness Hour. It'll change their life. But I mean, you bring up an interesting point. I think you're exactly right. I see this with the conservative space, the conservative news space, or even the, Republican political stuff with it's so much about just making a name for yourself or writing what's easy and not actually going out there and doing digging and finding the truth. I put out a post just a couple of days ago that I had you review actually about China and the Beijing Olympics and how America should boycott these Olympics. And I've been hearing this from some people, but I'm hearing from a lot of other conservative voices. I mean, they won't even touch this kind of stuff, right? They won't come out and talk about it or, say anything bad about China, whereas like people like you and others are saying what is actually going on. So when it comes to something like the Beijing Olympics, what are your thoughts on it?
Cancel them. But
Amen.
If we can't do that, which frankly, we probably won't because the entire world is under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party. And so
we're 22 days away.
Yeah, right. America definitely shouldn't go. But, I think that what's going on right now with the Olympics is a perfect example of how really every aspect of the West, you can make it America specific, but I think it's a broader, to use a term of the left, systemic problem that, you see going on here. But it's a perfect example of what I kind of focus on in my reporting. People may have seen there was an article a few days ago where one of the corporate sponsors of the Olympics, I forget the company's name, I hadn't heard of them, but they were reached out to comment, and they said by actually someone who I believe had survived the Xinjiang concentration camps. They run a human rights organization, and they asked them, they said, why are you comfortable sponsoring the Olympics? And whether it was a PR blunder or frankly, I think it was telling of where these companies' intentions lie, they actually said, a direct quote, that they were proud to be sponsoring the Olympics. So not only the fact that you have all these corporate sponsors of the Olympics, but you are really right. There seems to be a total silence. There's an op-ed every now and then, but from the media. And remember, all these corporate media outlets, all these woke left-wing politicians who preach tolerance, although we know tolerance is code for, well, only if, I agree with you.
Right.
These are the people who are, cheerleading and aiding and abetting one of the most, if not the most brutal and repressive regime in the history of the world currently right now, to be hosting an event that they shouldn't be hosting in the first place with regard to how they handled COVID-19 and, how they've really tried to hide and obscure the origins of this virus through the various probes that we've been seeing going on to try to get to the bottom of this virus. But unfortunately, no one, at least no one with power, really has the appetite or the urge to hold the Chinese Communist Party to account. That's why we still haven't gotten to the bottom of the origins of COVID-19. Frankly, I'm skeptical if we ever will, but it's a perfect example of how when no one in power is willing to actually engage with the Chinese Communist Party, the best we can get is maybe a few diplomats don't go to the Olympics. But it's wild that, a couple years after COVID-19, we're going to be sending athletes to a country that likely unleashed this pandemic. They'll be experiencing the economic boom and just the, power boom, right? It's a regime that craves authority and looking powerful and looking important. And what better way to do that than let them host the Olympics?
No, I mean, they have said straight up that they want world domination. I mean, that is their plan. They have said this. And the fact that we're sending these athletes there to go and compete, just to me seems like it's a clear callback to the 1936 games where, athletes, there were boycott movements all over the world, but still all these countries sent athletes to Germany. Germany was bolstered by people going in and saying, hey, look at Germany, look how great we're doing. You know, the Nazis were awesome. And right after the Olympics ended, then Germany Hitler and the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia, Austria, Poland. They felt emboldened because they knew that these other countries would bend the knee to them. And that's what it feels like with China now, that if people are going to say, hey, China, what you're doing is okay, we're going to send athletes to you, and all this corporate press and all these billions of dollars from corporations, that means it's okay. I hear a lot of people, I put this article out and I have people talking about, well, you know, America just needs to go over there and they need to kick their butt when it comes to the sports. You know, let's get some gold medals in skiing and sledding and show them that America is strong. For me, that argument doesn't hold up, because I don't think that the cost outweighs the benefit from actually going and doing that. What do you think about that when it comes to is going there and winning a bunch of gold medals for America? Is that enough of a slap in the face to China to justify going to these games?
Certainly not. I think you really hit the nail on the head in that not going to the Olympics is not just about standing up to the human rights abuses that we see going on, right? That's obviously the tip of a very, very large iceberg when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party's, sins and crimes against humanity. But there's a bigger, more systemic problem that no number of gold medals is going to fix, and that is that the Chinese Communist Party fundamentally seeks to override and really overrule America in terms of kind of the global world order. And they admit it. I think the Chinese Communist Party is probably the only enemy of America that, when they tell us what their intentions are, our media establishment and our politicians don't take them at face value. They try to euphemize what they're saying, when in reality, if you read Chinese state-run media, which I'm blessed to do every day, and watch all their TV shows, every other day they're demanding a military buildup. They're saying this is the day we're going to take over Taiwan. Every day as the Olympics get closer, I don't see any tempering of the Chinese Communist Party's aggression. And frankly, I think what they see going on in Afghanistan, what they see going on in America's southern border, all this crisis going on, they're going to have a moment of calm, a moment where the spotlight is all on them with the Olympics. And I'm sure I would, I don't know if I'd bet a lot of money, but I definitely would wager that after the Olympics, I think they will move on Taiwan. I think they'll feel very, very emboldened, because frankly, what is their takeaway? They get to release a global pandemic that totally fundamentally rearranges the global economy to benefit the Chinese Communist Party, destroy our financial system, destroy our way of life, strip away our civil liberties. And a couple of years after that, they get to host, the world's top sporting game. That to me is, we can do whatever we want. We're the Chinese Communist Party, and we can get away with it because America is too busy, debating over inflation, and certain spending packages and, what genders we should be calling our children, which is, of course, I would argue another thing, this whole kind of woke movement that we've seen that's related to the Chinese Communist Party. But no number of gold medals, that's playing by their rules. That's fitting into a paradigm where, again, the Chinese Communist Party, I'm sure those medals will be made in China.
Right.
You don't want those. So.
Yeah, they're going to be made out of those little chocolate ones, probably. Not even real gold.
COVID, probably.
Yeah, but I think you're right. And thinking about Taiwan, if they're going to invade Taiwan, that seems like a definite possibility. And it also goes even deeper than that. What about India? India and China, they're feeling more and more emboldened to do even more than what I think a lot of people are suspecting that they will do. I think especially when China's getting pushed into a corner. They have a population that is, they had 400 million abortions because of their one-child policy. They have a very old population. It seems like for China, especially with their inflation, that they're seeing, their economy's wild right now. I think that they are really coming to a tipping point where they kind of have to make the decision and say, it's either time to act and do this and make get this world domination that we want, or to just go away. What do you think is the next plan for their country when it comes to that?
Well, I think they're definitely, and by they, I mean, Beijing and people within the Chinese Communist Party, because it is difficult, right? Not everyone who lives in China is a member of the Chinese Communist Party, right. And they're the biggest victims, as we well know, of this brutal regime. But I definitely think that, they've been very straightforward with what their intentions are, whether that's through launching programs like the Belt and Road Initiative, Made in China 2025, which we're getting a lot closer to, right? That's just 3 years away now. They've made it clear the writing is on the wall. They want to be the global superpower. I don't really even think that they want a bipolar state of affairs, in the sense that, it's the United States rules in tandem with China. They want to be top dog. They don't want the United States to be in power anymore. And I think that after the Olympics, like I said, I think that is potentially when they will invade Taiwan, because I think that that's kind of the convergence, not just of, America and the economic situation we have at home being really, really, really bad and getting even worse. And yes, China does too, but they have a bit of a different situation because they have such a heavily state-run media. And just in general, it's harder to criticize the Chinese Communist Party than it is even though it's not super open debate that we have here in the media, people are more aware, I think, of what's going on here when it comes to the economy. But I think that China will strike while the iron is hot. And I think coming off of the Olympics, especially as, Omicron rages, and like I said, America just seems to be facing all these internal problems. Believe me, I think China watched what happened in Afghanistan with a very, very watchful eye and a very curious eye, in the sense that they realized, that America on the global stage right now is not the America that it used to be. And with that, I think that they know, and they've known for a long time, that they could probably get away with invading Taiwan. But as you were mentioning, Germany and Czechoslovakia, history will repeat itself. And I think that the Chinese Communist Party, as evil as they are students of history. They know that very well. Believe me, they know Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires, and I'm sure they love nothing more than watching, America waste blood, treasure, and soil there for so many years. So I think that they will move. And again, and it's not just, a scary prospect for Americans. People may be wondering, oh, why should I care about Taiwan? You should if you enjoy using your iPhone. You should if you enjoy using anything that uses, any of these chips that we so desperately need for technology. But that entire region, you mentioned India is very important. It's just very, very, very messy. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of clear-cut reporting on, what China's doing. We've covered it, but, they're playing with some really dangerous stuff. They're manipulating weather. They use microwave radiation against troops in India. They have some really, really scary technological advances. Meanwhile, our American military is focusing on pronouns and reading Mao. But it's a really scary prospect that I think people don't quite understand.
Yeah, you mentioned there that was important about reporting on what's happening in China. And there's basically no one who's actually reporting the truth on China in the mainstream media in America today. And that's because the mainstream media is controlled in many ways by the CCP. The CCP has a level of dominion over American media. Can you talk a little bit more about that and explain the examples that people probably have no idea are happening?
Yes, so this is probably my favorite topic to talk about. So thank you for asking me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know, very, very niche.
Uh-huh.
But so this is a story that I've talked about a lot because I think it's very, very important. So I believe it was in December of last year, I guess 2 years ago now, we put out, it was probably my first major exclusive story, and it had to do with exactly that, how mainstream media talking points, much like a lot of things in America, are also made in China. And what I uncovered through what is called the Foreign Agent Registration Act. So this is a database. It's housed at the Department of Justice. So these are, legal documents where any company, any entity that is American that is working on behalf of a foreign corporation, a foreign country, a foreign individual has to register. They have to file so they can specify the kind of work that they're doing for this foreign company, for this foreign individual. And I found that since 2010, there's a lobbying firm by the name of BLJ, Brown Lloyd James, and they have been essentially hooking up Chinese Communist Party influence groups. The premier one is known as the China United States Exchange Foundation, with American journalists. So what they've been doing, like I said, since 2010, they've been paying to take journalists from every single top outlet in the United States. I could read you all the list of all the outlets that are participating, but it might take a little long. But it's MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, even the two co-founders of Vox, Matthew Iglesias and Ezra Klein, have participated in these trips. But this foreign influence group that is funded, controlled, bankrolled by the Chinese Communist Party has been paying to take American journalists on trips overseas to China, where they take countrywide tours, they visit military facilities, they get lectured by Chinese state-run professors, and that in and of itself on face value sounds bad. But when I really started digging into these Foreign Agent Registration Act filings, I saw that upon return, so when these people came back to the United States, they were actually obliged, they were contractually obliged to provide, quote, favorable coverage to the Chinese Communist Party. And another quote that they had in these filings that they were compelled to give was, quote, disseminate positive messages about China, but more precisely, the Chinese Communist Party. And if you keep reading these filings, you can see that they admit to this lobbying firm influencing at least 3 articles within kind of the mainstream media echo chamber per week. That's per week. And
Right.
a lot of the names of these journalists who have participated in these programs, they've been deleted from the China United States Exchange Foundation's website. As you can imagine, it's the same reason that Antifa wears masks. They don't want you to know what they're doing. But luckily, I uncovered through looking at different archived versions of websites the identities of a lot of these people. And so I was curious and I dug into the kind of work and articles that they were publishing, especially around the time that they were taking these trips to China. And my personal favorite, there's one individual who upon return, I think it was about the month in which she returned to the United States from visiting China, she wrote an article and it was entitled "China Bashing is for Losers." So this
Nice.
kind of tells you about this.
We're losers,
person.
Natalie. We are losers.
I know. I'm the biggest loser then.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But there are many examples like that. And like I said, that's just one. There are over 250 active Chinese foreign agents in the United States right now. And those are only the ones that are reported. Remember, certain people who've done a lot of work with China never actually register. So it's very dark.
And so what you're saying is that these journalists and these news organizations are paid by the CCP to write favorable things about them. That's pretty much what you're saying.
That's a direct quote. And like I said, this is just, one example from kind of the entertainment perspective. Discovery Channel, which people may know, I know I grew up watching, they actually produced a TV show. It was called, I think it was like A Day Living in China, exploring the socialist countryside. And they actually produced the show. It was a game show. And if you read about the show and how they produced it, it was done, quote, under the direct supervision of this Chinese, state-run film agency. And even CBS, we put up a story not too long ago, CBS, which you think is, it's a mainstream media outlet, but, they're not going to be pushing, Beijing propaganda. But you'd be wrong to even think that. They partnered with another state-run Chinese broadcaster where they actually aired these documentaries that were very, very favorable to the Chinese Communist Party. One of them actually spoke about the Cultural Revolution, that is the Cultural Revolution that killed millions, in a very positive light as something that I think we should, have happen here in the United States. And real quick, just because I know too much, but believe it or not, the New York Times and CNN, they actually fund China's premier journalism school, which is hosted at Tsinghua University. Yes, the same university that has hacked the United States government, that has been accused of spying on the United States government. But they have what's called a, quote, Marxist journalism school. In the dean's letter about the school, they admit to being overtly Marxist and wanting to create Marxist journalists. Well, they enjoyed backing and internships from some of America's top news outlets. I think I left Bloomberg off that list. So there really, really is a close relationship between a lot of these American media outlets and the Chinese Communist Party, and more precisely, these Chinese state-run media outlets. A lot of CNN people, once they either get fired or resign, so maybe Chris Cuomo will have a future there, but they've actually gone to work at state-run media outlets like China Global Television Network. So it's a very, very murky ecosystem.
Oh, Jeffrey Tubin needs to learn Mandarin.
Yeah.
That's something we all want to see, huh? No, but I don't think I don't think people understand how big of a deal this is. How important it is, the things that you are saying right now, because these are the institutions in America that are supposed to be trusted as the means to disseminate information to all of us so that we can understand what's going on, right? So when we talk about the mainstream media, Trump talked about fake news, or whoever talks about fake news, and we say, oh, it's just kind of woke leftist nonsense. It definitely is that. But when you then look at this and see the control that China has over it, the CCP has over it, it's more than just that. Right? Because it is an infiltration into our media to control us and make us into a weak country. Let's jump a little bit and go to TikTok. I mean, this is something that I've been seeing is just, to me, it seems like a destruction of the youth in this country. The things that are on TikTok, the things that are heralded as good on the platform, the things that go viral. It's women doing pretty vulgar things in a lot of ways. It is a destruction of American culture. Yet, if you go and look at Chinese TikTok, they don't allow any of that stuff on TikTok. Right? It's like hardworking people and things that are pro-government. And it's like, it feels to me like, just like with the mainstream media, that something like TikTok is an infiltration strategy by the CCP to make America into a weak population that is divided.
Definitely. It was Sun Tzu who said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing going on, because part of the critique that I think you could see of the Chinese Communist Party and their relationship with, their big tech platforms like TikTok, the mainstream media, is that they're just exploiting these platforms to shape the discourse and the dialogue about China to be one of, China's great. What they're doing to the Uyghurs isn't actually that bad. But I think the more nuanced critique, which you're getting at, and frankly, I think is more important because it has more relevance to our lives as Americans, is how they're shaping the conversations about things like social issues, things like even, gender. I see a lot of articles on TikTok about how people are like, TikTok helped me realize that I was gay. TikTok helped me realize that I was bisexual. I don't think they have any of that on Chinese TikTok.
No, none.
Right, exactly. So, and this kind of intersects too, that group I brought up, the China United States Exchange Foundation, and also I will say a lot of this, when it gets to how the Chinese Communist Party subverts the American culture war, by design, they make it very hard to piece together, right? They leave little breadcrumbs, but it's very hard to really track down China's influence. But What was really interesting to me, there's a group called the National Urban League. And this was one of the foremost groups that sued the Trump administration when they were putting out their ban on critical race theory teaching in the federal government for contractors. And I thought it was curious as to why it would be that group. I was sure there was some reason. And I actually dug into this group's background. And again, for over 10 years, they've been collaborating with the China United States Exchange Foundation. All of their executives have taken these same kind of pay-for-play trips to China, like I said, for over a decade. This is the same group that's now actively trying to impede bans on critical race theory. And what's really interesting is that the National Urban League was also instrumental, absolutely instrumental, in allowing the first ever Confucius Institutes to be built on college campuses. And for people who don't know what Confucius Institutes are, very, very briefly, they're these Chinese state-funded, state-run propaganda centers that spew Beijing's line when it comes to China, but that's just a very malign influence on cultural values and on American campuses, but they have been to some extent kind of locked out now. They've been kicked off campus. But I think it's very curious that you see the same group that is spearheading, Confucius Institutes joining and being placed on American campuses is now defending critical race theory. And this gets into, you guys talk a lot about academia and the biases that you see going on there. But the China United States Exchange Foundation, they also sponsor trips to China for students. And one little anecdote that really struck me. So in 2017, they actually partnered with, believe it or not, the people who love to tell you that you're racist because, you're not woke to the nines, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. They partnered with the China United States Exchange Foundation to send students from their districts on these, basically they're called familiarization trips in China. And they would actually meet with, they being students as young as, 11 and 10, would be meeting with Chinese military officials, Chinese state-run think tanks, all these horrible, horrible, horrible people. And upon return, they were forced to write testimonials about what they experienced. And there's one individual, and I'll read the quote because I think it's worth reading, because I think this really conveys the gravity of the situation. But so this is a high school student who participated in a QSEF, that's the acronym China United States Exchange Foundation, trip to China. And she said, I learned that the culture and history of China far exceeds those of the United States, exceeds it so well, it's predicted that China will be the #1 country of foreign policy and investments in less than 20 years. Open your eyes and your mind, research for yourself, and don't be corrupted by the misinterpretation the classrooms feed us. God knew that I needed to participate in this program. He saw me fit to be one of the 20 students that helped spread the positive light of an amazing communist country, as well as help bridge that gap between the China-US cultural exchanges. So this is the kind of misinformation, and I use that word in its truest intention, not the way the left likes to co-opt it, that is being filled in the brains of these young students, but all the way up to the top anchors on these primetime news shows. So this is the kind of cultural war that we're seeing being waged. And no one really wants to talk about how the Chinese Communist Party is so directly responsible for so much of it.
Right. They know they can get away with it because they know that when you influence children, then, people aren't really going to ask questions so much. But when you try, it's like when you have these teachers in America, these left-wing teachers who teach all their kids about gender theory and this LGBT nonsense, that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, they have to convince the kids of it, because if you try and tell this stuff to adults who actually think for themselves for the most part, they know that it's ridiculous. Right. So they do this stuff with children or students and bring them over to convince them. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm being correct, I think that they make every child in China, when they're going through school, read The Art of War, right? Like that shows the level of control that they have over these people. That quote that you read is just, it's ridiculous. That is crazy that you are convincing Americans to hate their own country and love China and their propaganda more than the country that gave them everything that they have, gave them the opportunity to even go to China to experience those kinds of things.
It's wild. And there are so many examples of that. Another, I think, really shocking example. I like to go for shock value because I think it's good to convey.
Get those clicks.
Right? But so Confucius Institutes have basically a sister group called Confucius Classrooms. And these are at the K through 12 level. Again, as young as 4-year-old students being subjected to Chinese Communist Party propaganda. So we found one 4th grade classroom in Utah. Not only were the students there forced to be pen pals with Xi Jinping, that is the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, but in that same classroom, they were also airing Chinese military parades. Again, 4th graders. This was all sponsored by a Confucius Institute program at a public school, so a taxpayer-funded public school at that. And there are many examples of this. And I think you are very right in that TikTok has kind of made that culture war, so easy, so accessible, right? It's in the palm of your hand. And we uncovered probably last year, but a statement that the CEO or former CEO now of TikTok had made in 2018. He had developed a bunch of apps, and one of them was actually removed from the Chinese app store for improper and immoral content, right? That's what they love to euphemize anything that allows for criticism of the Chinese Communist Party. And he had to issue a huge apology statement to the authorities, to the officials, in hopes of, frankly, probably saving his life, because he knew he might end up like another, Chinese billionaire. Just, oh no, he, fell off the wall and died, because that does happen a lot over there. But in this letter, he admits that going forward, and again, this predates TikTok, that he would use all of his platforms and his business endeavors to, quote, promote socialist core values. And he goes on to talking about how he's going to do a better job of really weaving in the Chinese Communist Party's ambitions, agenda, values, the whole thing, into any programs that he'd be creating going forward. In the next program he creates is TikTok, a platform that we know censors content that goes against the Chinese Communist Party's official narratives on a lot of issues, but is also responsible for a lot of, I would say, just domestic decay that we see going on. And, there were reports that there was a lot of use of TikTok for people who were seeking to enter the United States illegally, People were trying to help illegal immigrants enter across the border. They were like planning and strategizing, but there's just a lot of weird gender stuff on there. Frankly, I think there's just a lot of, degeneracy. And believe me, the Chinese Communist Party is the biggest victor and the biggest winner when America's social structures and social values and just the institutions that we have crumble, because it's a lot easier to exploit and take over a society when everyone within it hates it, just like the quote I read from that college student or the high school student going on that trip to China. So it's very calculated. I guess reading Sun Tzu in an elementary school has its payoff because they really know how to wage political warfare.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I have been banned off TikTok. Amala was banned off TikTok. PragerU has been banned, I believe, like 5 times off of TikTok.
It's a badge of honor.
No, seriously. I wear it, right here. I want everyone to know. But I mean, the CCP is paying other social media companies. I mean, they're owning parts of different social media companies like Snapchat and others, paying millions of dollars to get their messaging across, having it so that people don't actually know what's going on in China, and they're influencing these people on what they censor and what they allow on their platform. But it goes even deeper than that. I mean, it goes from some of the reporting I've seen you do, it goes even deeper into actually the halls of our government, the lobbying, the swamp. Talk a little bit about that and how deep it really goes with the CCP in America.
Yeah, so the reason that the Chinese Communist Party has been so successful, I would argue, in terms of subverting really just, America as a whole, but really understanding how the American political system works, is because they have really, really bought off a bunch of lobbyists. And I'm sure people know what lobbyists are. I'm sure everyone has a very, negative view on them, as they should. But
yes.
I lived in Washington, D.C. for, a year and a half, 2 years. And just from living there, I think a week, you discern how influential these groups, these people are over the American political system, right? That is how things get done in D.C. It's these backroom deals. It's these K Street lobbying firms. And it was really, really eye-opening to me. Brief story, the Trump administration put out a list of about 20 Chinese companies that they flagged as proxies of China's military. So these were directly aiding and abetting the People's Liberation Army. And of these 20 companies, 4 of them, so that's 20%, I had seen them before, and they were kind of obscure companies. I was like, why do I know the names of these companies? I'm not a PLA collaborator. And I realized, as someone who reads these lobbying registrations and databases basically every day, that was where I had seen them. And I realized that, Chinese military collaborators have lobbyists in Washington, D.C. That is where we are, in 2022. And I started really getting into that and looking into, A, how that was legal, but B, kind of the ramifications of that. And I started looking, and like I said, there are about a little over 250 active Chinese Communist Party foreign agents. So these are whether they're influence groups, companies, individuals who have retained U.S.-based lobbyists right now in the United States, working to push the agenda, of the Chinese Communist Party. I would say at the expense of the American taxpayer and Americans more broadly. But this is really how they get to the heart of America's political system, in the sense that whether it's, various Chinese embassies, actual Chinese officials, or these kind of influence groups like the China-United States Exchange Foundation, that while they are technically not a, de facto or de jure branch of the Chinese Communist Party, they effectively are. And they pay these firms, millions and millions and millions of dollars to get secret meetings with officials in the White House, to get secret meetings in Congress. And there are many, many examples. I think one of my personal favorites, just because it's so outlandish. So Nancy Pelosi's, and I think the other really important thing to note about these lobbying firms is that, they're staffed basically 100% with people whose salaries we used to pay, right? These are people who used to work in the federal government, people, whether it's the White House or Congress. So I think that to me is, salt in the wound.
Right.
And a perfect example of that is, so Nancy Pelosi's former communications director, Brendan Daly, name you've probably never heard of, not that important, but after departing the Pelosi office, again, running her comms operation, he started lobbying for China Central Television, which is China's top state-run broadcaster. And it's not just that, he barely did any work for them. They were going to launch in the United States anyway. So, the guy just inked a contract with them. He paid him, a nice kickback fee. No. It was Ogilvy, public relations firm. They were actually responsible for launching CCTV's American rollout into American homes. That's China Global Television Network. And if you read the documents about what they were doing for CCTV, again, a state-run broadcaster that denies the Xinjiang genocide, that insists COVID-19 was, created in the United States, that airs forced confessions, that it was actually a compelling and balanced source of news for American homes. And this is Nancy Pelosi's communications director. And there are many, many, many such examples. I encourage people to go to the National Pulse. You can see former Washington Post editors, people who used to work at the DNC, and believe me, people who used to work at the RNC too, have all somehow ended up on the payroll in a, very easy to see way of a lot of these Chinese Communist Party run firms, but also in some cases, just the Chinese Communist Party outright.
I mean, the fact that there are even TV providers in America who would say, oh, this is fine to put on, I think shows us how backwards we are as a country, right? It shows us how sick of a society that we have. And I think you brought up an important point when you said, listen, this isn't just people in the DNC. This is the RNC as well. There are people who are bought out, no matter what your political party is, people who are fine selling this country to a foreign power for their own selfish gain, for their own power, their own money, whatever it is. And that's a tough thing for a lot of people to come to realization to. And that's why these issues, when it comes to China, doesn't get talked about a lot, because they have the money to buy out not just media, not just people on the left, but also people on the right, people in Hollywood, people in the university system, all of this. It is more than just, little things that people have thought about China for years. This is like an all-encompassing problem.
No, you are correct. I'm not, cherry picking my examples to fit a narrative. I have to pick examples out of, the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, that I've seen. And it really does permeate into every industry and just kind of aspect of American society. You bring up Chinese state-run TV, because I think there is something deeper there. The fact that, we see American companies that choose to defend conservative values deplatformed, overnight, right? Instantaneously. Right. But all these huge television providers will still give a platform to these Chinese state-run broadcasters, of which there are many. But I also think it's interesting. And like I think I joked, I always joke, I am the probably the only American and the only, non-bot viewer of these programs when they air. But I think it's important to, know your enemy. But there are actually a lot of Americans that participate on these programs too. Believe it or not, very, very senior NIH officials, that is the, taxpayer-funded National Institutes of Health, which Anthony Fauci leads, the infectious diseases and allergies branch of, who actually participate quite frequently in interviews with CGTN. They actually produced a documentary on the origins of COVID-19 not too long ago.
I'm sure that was just full of information and just all the right answers, right?
Oh, definitely. They blamed everything from frozen food to, Americans to, probably Prager for starting COVID-19.
No, seriously, this show started COVID-19. They couldn't stop eating pangolins.
But they used, I believe it was the director of emergency medicine at the NIH. I think that was his position. But he was one of the star interviewees in this documentary. So that's taxpayer-funded NIH officials starring in Chinese propaganda documentaries about the origins of COVID. And there have been a lot of researchers who have received a lot of money from Anthony Fauci. I'm talking millions of dollars, who go on Chinese state-run media and praise Beijing's response to COVID-19, which is just absolutely insane at face value. And interestingly enough, kind of the similar level of, it really is misinformation. I hate how the left has ruined that word. But a lot of the experts, so-called experts, that the American media would cite to debunk, the lab leak theory, well, they also had a lot of ties to the Chinese Communist Party. One of my favorites, there was an individual named Deborah Seligson, who not only was a star in Chinese state-run media, she had been on CGTN a bunch, but she actually in the 90s went over to China and lectured at the Central Party School. So she was lecturing Chinese Communist Party officials, and she wrote a bunch of op-eds. She was quoted in every mainstream media outlet as one of the top deniers of the lab leak theory. There were other people, such as like Dr. Ian Lipkin, who, if you read his resume, he describes himself as a consultant for the Chinese Communist Party. And he was, again, one of these top voices that American media outlets amplified to deny and discredit the lab leak. And there are many, many, many examples of this, too many to list. And this is just kind of the example of the subversive, kind of under the radar way that these media outlets will push an agenda without really even telling you and never disclosing, where the individuals they're quoting, get their money from, while in the same breath screaming foreign collusion when it comes to Donald Trump.
I think all this information, you're going to get me banned off YouTube, Natalie.
You're welcome.
Which is fine. This is the fight that there are hills now in America that I think that we as people who love freedom and who love truth, there are hills to die on. Right? I think when it comes to the stuff with the COVID pandemic, I think that's something to die on. I think when it comes to all this with China and the control that they have over us, it's something to die on. When you're seeing what's happening, I mean, I am looking at what's happening with the CCP, and I say boldly, I will never let the CCP have dominion over me, not now, not ever, any control over my life to the best of my ability that I can. I hope that the people in America say the same thing. What is the solution for getting outside of their realm of control?
Yes, well, that is the very, very difficult million, if not billion-dollar question, because it is so hard, because really every institution in the United States that has power, even the Republican Party, is pretty okay with the way things are, and is pretty okay with the control of the Chinese Communist Party. It's a very, nice, corrupt bargain between our elites and the Chinese. But I think just the fact that, hopefully you've listened to this interview, and there are many, many, well, not many, there, I would say maybe just one. There are many others, like myself, who do pay due diligence to this issue. So listen to them. They're much smarter than I am. But I think in informing yourself and just knowing that, it's not just the origins of COVID-19 that the Chinese Communist Party has attempted to cover up. It is a decades-long assault on American liberties, on American culture. It is a decades-long calculated incursion into every single corner of American society, from your kindergarten classroom to your college professor, to even, the pharmaceutical, meds that you have to take. Those have all been outsourced to China too for manufacturing, because believe me, a lot of those people who did that are getting a lot of kickbacks now, although now we're learning the hard shortcomings of doing that. But I think just understanding that every single corner, which I think people know, that this country, this great country that we live in, is really a battlefield for the Chinese Communist Party. So I think it's just being diligent and, sharing these stories are really, really important. But, I think just, they love to say herd immunity, and that's, HERD immunity. But I think my thing is herd, HEARD immunity, right? When it comes to hearing these stories, because if you listen and you read these stories and you know what the Chinese Communist Party, with all their Wall Street buddies and what they're trying to do, not just with COVID-19, but just in general, it won't work on you. And I think the more people that we can get kind of understanding this, believe me, when I talk to most people my age about this, they look at me, their eyes gloss over, and they say, "You are crazy."
I know.
But I think, right? I know. So if we could get more people to understand the gravity, it's worth deleting TikTok. It's worth not going on TikTok. It's worth not seeing a stupid short-minute video if it means, saving the United States. So I think just framing it in terms of, risk rewards that people can understand. But I've yet to come up with the solution to it, because if I did, I would have enacted it a while ago.
Yeah, of course. No, we can't expect you to be the president yet, but soon enough, who knows? I'll have you help me with this. What I'm trying to do as my kind of final goodbye on TikTok, I want to make a video, and I want the video to get banned. I want the video to get me banned. So if you have any good ideas for a video that will definitely get me banned by the CCP, I would love to hear it.
Well, you could just collab with the National Pulse, and I think you could post a clip of this interview, and you might be good.
Oh, good. Easy enough.
I think you should do a TikTok with my wonderful boss, who's doing a PragerU video, Raheem Kassam. I think he is someone who they really don't like. Or even better, Steve Bannon is sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party. So maybe you could do an awesome video. And so is Peter Navarro, another good friend of War Room. So maybe you could do a video highlighting everyone who's been sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party. And
I know we all do. We do one of those videos like the nurses dancing.
Yeah, but there we go.
With Steve Bannon, I'm sure people, if Steve Bannon does a TikTok dance, I'm sure they'll keep it up. There's no way people cannot see that, right? I'm hoping next week I'm going to be in D.C. For the Defeat the Mandates D.C. rally with Robert Malone, Dr. McCullough, a lot of Robert Kennedy Jr. So hoping to go on War Room when I'm there next Saturday for the 5 p.m. show. We'll see if we can do it, and then we'll try and get the TikTok with Steve and see if we can get banned. See what we can do. But Natalie, this could have been I had more questions here that I had down. This could be a 3-hour long Joe Rogan podcast, but sadly the show only goes for an hour. So tell people about, how they can find out more about you, find out more information about all of this as well, and what their call to action should be.
Sure. So you can find me, as much as I just railed against big tech and Chinese Communist Party collaborators, you can find me on one of the worst platforms, Twitter, at Natalie G. Winters. That's where I share, although I'm sure very shadow banned, most of my articles. I also share my stuff on Facebook. And Raheem and I do have a podcast. It's the National Pulse. You can go to thenationalpulse.com/support us to help us out. And I'm also on Getter at Natalie G. Winters, but I think your best bet is probably Twitter, which again is Natalie G. Winters. Yeah,
everyone getting on Getter. It's the future, right? As they would say in the war room. It's amazing. So Natalie, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. And I really hope people take what you said and what we discussed today to heart. It really is important, and it's one of the biggest fights of our time, and people got to start waking up and paying attention to it. And when you see the truth, when you see things like this happening, you don't say, oh, this is for someone else to worry about. This is for the quote unquote experts to talk about and worry about. You say, no, I know the truth. I know the information. And maybe even if people don't like me for saying this truth or information, you're going to get it out there anyway. You're going to share the articles with the truth about the CCP. You're going to share episodes like this. You're going to do things to get real information out there, because you will not kowtow to what the CCP or the left or any of these people wanting to control you want you to do. It's time for us all to be brave and be those strong people. If you guys enjoyed this show, make sure that you like this video, comment your thoughts down below, share this with your friends. You can always find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Play. Rate us 5 stars on there. Let us know that you're enjoying the show. Let people know that, you prefer the episodes with just Amala over the episodes that just have me. And that's about it, guys. We're going to see you next week on Monday for some new episodes. Thanks, guys, for watching. All right, everyone. We have the legendary Dave Ramsey on the show today. It's an honor to have you, sir.
Well, I'm honored to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've had some great PragerU presenters from the Ramsey Network, the Ramsey family. We had Rachel Cruz. Her video has over 3 million views on PragerU. We got to do something with you, too.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad Rachel did well.
Yeah, no, it's all been very successful. Now, you have a new book coming out, Baby Steps Millionaires. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I really hadn't done a major trade book in about 8 years and didn't have an intention of doing another one, but I kept running into a couple of things that, well, they just correlated and told me I needed to do it at this time. One was I kept hearing all this drumbeat in the marketplace from people that with a political agenda or some kind of socialist agenda or whatever it is, explaining to people that, that the American dream is dead. The chances of getting ahead and building wealth and being financially successful in America is over. You can't do it now. The only way to have money is inherit money. And I knew that to be a lie. And I knew these people were out there just stealing people's hope. Hope stealers. I don't care for hope stealers because we're in the hope business. And so, and the other piece was I knew it was wrong because I kept running into, after 30 years of teaching people to get out of debt so that they could be generous, so that they could build wealth, I kept running into these people who had followed our baby steps and become millionaires. And there's like tens of thousands of them because we've had millions of people go through our classes and millions of people on the radio, millions of books sold, all that kind of stuff. So there's easily tens of thousands of millionaires out there. So I knew we had the proof that these hope stealers were wrong. And so that's really what the book is. It's all the evidence from 30 years of experience, from an airtight study of 10,000 millionaires, from lots of wonderful stories of people who really did it, to show that, yes, while America's got our troubles, while we got things we got to overcome, and success is never easy, it is very doable today to become a millionaire.
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about that. I mean, I know as someone who I work in the more political, cultural world, and I see what's happening with the economy and, price of education is going up, price of housing is going up, healthcare, all these things are going up. And when you see all of that happening, do you still think that the American dream is alive for most people?
Yes, it is. Because here's the thing. One element of all of that inflation is the cost of wages, the cost of employees. And it enters into the cost of goods sold and drives the prices up. We've got 1,100 folks working here at Ramsey, and what it takes to hire a developer, a senior level developer, is substantially different than what it was 3 years ago. And guess what? That cost then is built into the things that we sell, which drove those prices up. Has to be. But the developer's making money. More money than she's ever made in her life. And so, the wages are correlating with it for the people that choose to enter fields that where they can do that. Now, certainly you can manage to fail in America. It's possible. But if you will ride some of the waves of some of the wonderful things happening right now in our economy, you can make more money than you've ever made in your life.
And what is the number one piece of advice that you tell people, say, hey, if you want to be a millionaire or you want to make it in America, what do you tell people as the first step? What is the first baby step?
Well, the 7 baby steps are what we've taught forever. That's not really new material for us, but the book is more about showing exactly how they work. Baby step 1 is $1,000 in the bank. Quickly do that. 2 is get all your debt paid off except your house. We use the debt snowball to do that. You probably heard that. List them smallest to largest. And because if you get rid of your non-mortgage payments in most households, that's $1,400 a month, $1,200 a month, somewhere right in there. If you invest that in your 401k, that alone eventually will make you a millionaire. I mean, that's $15,000 a year, and that will turn into some serious money if you invest that over time. So you get out of debt because that's your most powerful wealth building tool. Then you finish your emergency fund as baby step 3. Baby step 4 is really where the millionaire stuff starts happening. You start putting 15% of your income after you've done these other things. You've got some money, 15% of your income into retirement, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, good growth stock mutual funds. And then kids' college is baby step 5, and 6 is pay off the house early. When we studied all of these millionaires, it was 10,000 of them in the largest study of millionaires ever done in North America. We discovered the typical millionaire in their first $1 to $5 million worth of wealth typically amounts to a really nice paid-for house, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 paid-for house. Some cases more, some cases less, but right in there. And somewhere around $1 million in their 401ks and in their retirement mutual funds. And they did that over 12 to 17 years. So the biggest advice I've got is get in a system, get in a proven process, and don't fall prey to all the get rich quick that's going on out there, particularly right now. A whole new wave of get rich quick has come through. And just getting a steady. And you have a very high probability of building wealth then.
Yeah, and I really agree with you. I think that people have to be able to take control of their own lives, take control of their own finances to make something happen. One thing that I've seen is, baby boomers at about the age of 35, they own 21% of the nation's wealth. Millennials right now at about that same age only own 3% of the nation's wealth. Why do you see that this is happening, or do you think that there's a cultural problem when it comes to younger people in this country with money, or what are you seeing as the biggest problems facing young people financially today?
Well, I think that the millennial numbers are weird because the millennial generation it's so bifurcated. I've got a whole bunch of millennials on our team, and I love this generation. It's an incredible generation. But by bifurcated, I mean this. There is no middle ground with millennials. There's only two kinds: awesome and sucks. I mean, it's like they're useless, or they will chase down the gates of hell with a water pistol. And so what you'll probably find if you drilled down into that stat is that a certain portion of millennials have unbelievable wealth, way ahead of the game, and a certain portion are almost nothing. So it's not a cultural breakdown or a generational breakdown, or we've got a whole generation that forgot how to be smart. It's just this bifurcation in that particular generation, which I think makes them incredible. Again, we love having them on the team because they're very, very passionate, and they do build wealth. I mean, I had a millennial yesterday, 32 years old, paid off their home, and their net worth is a little over $1 million.
That's incredible. What are some of the success stories that you've seen? Do you have any off the top of your head that you're like, this blew me away, something to give people who might be watching this and saying, well, maybe it worked for someone, but it won't work for me? Do you have any success stories that you can list off?
After doing this for so long, we've met someone of every possible situation or demographic that has done it. And so racism is real. Sexism is real. But I meet people who overcome both of them all the time and become successful financially and in other areas of their life anyway. And so, everybody's got some kind of deck that is stacked against them one way or another. And the one thing all of these people that I meet have in common, whether they're, regardless of their race, their background, their religion, where they're coming from, is they have this, I have the ability to look past the stacked deck and go, I'm going to win anyway. I'm going to figure out a way. Jackie comes to mind. She's in the story. African-American lady, just precious. Oh, she is a neat woman. And she grew up in poverty. I mean, really bad situation, and vowed that, she was never going to be hungry again and never be with only one pair of shoes again. And went to school, went deeply in debt to go get her degree, got married, and started in a middle-class lifestyle with a bunch of student loan debt and a bunch of other debt. And that marriage ended in divorce, and she finds herself as a single mom right back in subsidized housing, right back on welfare. And she's like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And she made her decision that day, I'm going to learn how to step by step by step get out of this mess. And we meet her in the book many years later, and now she's a millionaire, and now she's raised 2 kids, gotten remarried, and has just a wonderful life. But, she overcame being a single mom, lady, African-American. I mean, she had everything going against her. And with a background that didn't have anything to do with money, and a background that no reason she should think she could win, and went and did it anyway. And those are just wonderful people. They're so fun to meet.
You talked there about student debt. And luckily myself, I dropped out of school, so I don't have really any student debt, but I know people who I grew up with who have, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt. Are you seeing right now that it's worth it for people to get into that amount of debt to go to school? Or what do you say is like the alternative or the right path to take with that? Because we have a young audience who watches us who might be thinking, it's just too expensive for me.
We just launched a major full-on documentary that is on Amazon Prime, and several 100,000 people have already viewed it, called Borrowed Future, about the student loan debacle in North America today. It's an epic failure. It is a serious, serious problem. And lots of people are really trapped. It's really sad. But they can get out. We can show them how. But man, my recommendation would be to never go in. No, there's not a situation where I have ever recommended someone take out a student loan to go to school. And the reason is you can get an education without going to school. With that school, the school you can't afford. And the problem is we got people with $200,000 of student loan debt that, their degree is left-handed puppetry. This just doesn't work, So what we tell folks to do is if you're going to go to school, and a 4-year education is a fine thing, there's nothing wrong with that, obviously get a degree in something that's usable and that the marketplace will pay you for, that there's a rate of return on your investment of time and of money. But first thing is pick a school you can afford. And that may mean you go to 2 years of junior college, and a lot of states that's free. Get that out of the way, and then go to an in-state school, transfer all those credits, and work while you're in school. But college choice, overpaying for the degree is the number one cause of the student loan mess. Going to schools that people can't afford, getting degrees that don't matter, and then people are stuck with $100,000 or $200,000, and it's a mess. So yeah, pick very, very carefully. I'm not one that says all higher education is bad. No, I believe in getting a degree. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's lots of trades you can do too that make a lot more than I mean, diesel mechanics making a whole lot more than somebody with a master's degree in social work.
Right. No, talk a little bit more about trade school. What do you think with that? Should people go into debt if they're getting trade school?
No, I'm not going to send you, this is Dave Ramsey. We're not sending you in debt for anything, man. It's not, no. But I mean, I'm talking to young guys and gals that are welders, they're diesel mechanics, they're heat and air. They're setting themselves up in the trades. And my friend Mike Rowe is really excited about this trend we're seeing, Dirty Jobs guy. And he and I have had some great talks about this. It's exciting to see the trades come back alive because they are legitimate. And the whole higher education movement looked down upon the trades as if they weren't a valid way to live your life. And they are. It's just a matter of what you're called to. But we're not going to say all four-year degrees are not worth it. No, some of them are definitely worth it. Particularly if you get a bunch of scholarships and you go for free, you work your way through, you pay reasonable tuitions and those kinds of things. Yeah, go get a good business degree, good marketing degree. There's nothing, you're going to learn some stuff doing that.
When it comes to credit cards, I know you talk a lot about this, and I have a lot of friends who will say, I get credit cards, and I didn't even follow your advice. I have credit cards too, and now that I'm talking to you, I feel kind of bad about it, to be honest.
Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned.
Yeah, I've sinned. I didn't follow the baby steps. But, people will come and say, well, I have a credit card because then I get these points. Or, I need to have a credit card so that I can build up this credit so I can buy a house or buy a new car or, whatever it is. What is your recommendation when it comes to how people should use them or if they shouldn't even use them at all?
Well, there's a couple of different elements to your question there. It's a really good question. Element number one is the points that you get back. We studied 10,000 millionaires, the largest study of millionaires ever done. Airtight research, very detailed, very in-depth. And the number of millionaires that we talked to that said that they became millionaires because of using points on their credit cards was precisely zero. So it's absolutely bogus. It's just a rationalization and a justification. 78% of the airline miles that are collected on credit cards are never used, 8 out of 10. And yet people are spending their butt off and going, oh, but I got airline miles. Oh, but I got Discover points. Here's the thing. If you get a 1% back on your card, that means you get $1,000 for every $100,000 you spent. Tell me how this formula turns into wealth. It doesn't. So that's just that whole idea. That's just someone going, I need a reason so I can do whatever the flip I want to do, which is I want to buy stuff I can't afford with money I don't have to impress people I don't even really like. So that's just silliness. The second one is the credit score issue. And the banking industry has taught all of America to worship at the altar of the great FICO. Oh, great FICO, we bring you offerings of interest, so you will raise our number so we can buy other things. Now, let's think about what a credit score is. There's only one way you get a credit score and maintain it, borrowing money. It's 100% having to do with borrowing money. All of the algorithm is built on that. It's not built on net worth. It's not built on your income. It's only built on your interaction with debt. So if I want a high credit score, I go borrow money. Why? So that I have a high credit score. Why? So that I can borrow money. Why? So that I can have a high credit score. Why? So that I can borrow money. There's nothing in this equation that causes you to build wealth. Nothing whatsoever. You're building a lot of wealth, however, for a bank. So millionaires pay cash for everything except possibly a house, and you can buy a house with manual underwriting if you want a mortgage with zero credit score, with a zero credit score. Had a guy on the air 3 days ago that did that. He was in his 20s, and he had never borrowed money in his life. He was a financial peace baby. His parents went through our stuff years ago, never borrowed money, went to Churchill Mortgage, got a mortgage, manually underwriting, absolutely no credit score, same interest rate as everybody else, put it on a 15-year fixed, no trouble at all. But you can't do a lot of things without a credit score. I haven't had a credit score in 30 years, so there's certain things I can't do without that. But you know what? I'll make the trade because I'm not giving the bank all my stinking money.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point there when you were just talking about, people are buying things that they don't need to impress people they don't like. Talk a little bit about that, a little bit deeper on that if you could, just about, maybe the culture of America and the way that people spend their money on things.
Well, I went broke in my 20s and lost everything. And in that unbelievably painful and scary, terrorizing experience, I lost. One of the things I lost that was a huge benefit to me was I lost my need to impress other people. And before that, I was really concerned about what other people thought about my car or my watch or my coat or whatever. I was really a pretty shallow, arrogant little twerp, really. And so, but when I went broke, it ground that out of me. And because a lot of the people that were supposed to be my friends, suddenly they didn't care about because we didn't have anything anymore. We're gone. It was gone. And, the Jaguar's gone. The house is gone. The trips to Hawaii are gone. And so, all of a sudden I looked like people didn't know what to do with that. And so when I quit caring what people thought, then I only made purchases that were good for me, my family, and our future. And when you narrow your purchases down to that, it changes your purchases. It changes what you're doing. And it doesn't mean you don't buy some nice things. I've got a really nice car, a couple of them right now. But I didn't buy any of those for what someone else thought. I bought them because I liked the car. And it was for me. And it was for my wife, And so we're going to enjoy that. But my need to impress somebody at a stoplight that I'll never meet is absolutely zero. And Americans spend $756 a month to impress somebody at a stoplight that they will never meet. I mean, we're crazy out here. We're just nuts. The thing on our coat, the thing on our whatever. Oh my goodness gracious! The prestige spending is bizarre. What some people spend for a purse or the right color on the bottom of their high heel shoes. Wow, it's nuts. But it's fun. It's fun to watch. But the people that we meet that build wealth, one of the things that happens to them or that they just make a decision on is they want to love their life, not theirs, as Rachel Cruz says in her book.
I want to wrap it up here after what you just said. It's kind of a bigger question, but when you look at the way that people spend money and the way that America is, it seems in some ways America has a little bit of a sickness, a cultural problem. People can definitely become the millionaires like you were saying. I 100% agree with you. But if you had to look at the things happening with America financially, maybe when it comes, I know you like to say, don't spend like Congress. What would you kind of give as an antidote to the future of America for people to hear on this show today?
Well, it was true in my life, and it's been true with a whole bunch of people we've led away from overspending, away from debt, into wise spending and building some wealth, and into a situation where they can be outrageously generous. That is a mathematical journey for sure, but it is not merely a mathematical journey. And you won't take the mathematical journey unless you first and simultaneously take the spiritual journey with it. And so you've got to really decide what's real, what's important, where are we really going. And so part of what is driving this ridiculous level of consumption is just our emotional and spiritual shallowness. And so if we would all grow up just a little bit, including Dave, we would all be running this whole thing a whole lot better. And it really is a lack of maturity. Adults devise a plan and follow it. Children do what feels good.
That's exactly right, man. Well, thank you. And look, we got Dave Ramsey kids here too.
All right.
Which I don't have any kids, unfortunately. Someday soon, hopefully. But a lot of our staff here, they have kids, and they all use these books, and
awesome.
They're really excited about it. We have a program with Prager U for kids as well.
Yeah.
That I think would be awesome to get them involved with the Ramsey kids stuff too.
Absolutely.
So how can people find out about your book, find out more about what you're doing, and just keeping updates on everything?
I appreciate that. RamseySolutions.com's got everything. You can find out about all the shows and the podcasts and everything else we're doing here. Certainly any of the books or classes that are taught and all that kind of stuff. And we'll help you out any way we can.
Fantastic. Well, Dave, it really means a lot that you came on today to discuss all this. I know it's a different type of audience, and I think they're really going to appreciate the things you had to say today, man. So I hope we can work together again soon.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for having me. I was honored to be with you.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey guys, welcome to Will and Amala. I apologize in advance. No cold open today because Will is late for some reason. We spent the whole day getting the show ready and he's not here, even though it's now 2:31. So yeah, it's tragic. Taylor's here though. Taylor
hey
showed
guys.
up.
Ignore this other person next to me for now. Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here,
Will,
don't worry.
hey. You decided to show up, huh?
It's been a crazy day.
Oh, really? It's
Let me
been
tell you.
crazy. What exactly caused you to be late?
Well, I met someone.
Oh, really? Because I'm thinking maybe you were in line too long at Chipotle or something like that. Was it that?
No, it wasn't that. I met someone.
Oh, really? Is it maybe that your convertible top on your car wouldn't go down?
No, I met someone for real this
Okay.
time.
Who'd you meet that was so important that you had to be late for the show?
I met Kirk Cameron.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
I promise I met him. Kirk, tell him, Kirk.
Amala, it's true. We bumped into each other at Chipotle.
Kirk
I was waiting
Cameron.
in line too long, and he was trying to fix his convertible top. But we did meet, and that's why he's late.
Wow, what a wicked turn of events, guys.
Yeah, so I don't want to
Cameron.
hear anything out of you anymore, okay?
Never again will I complain about Will being late. Kirk Cameron, welcome to Will and Amala Live.
Hey, I am really honored to be here with you guys. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Excited about it. Let's get into, first and foremost, why you're on the show today. Today we released a video featuring you yourself, Kirk Cameron. You did a Stories of Us episode, and I want to show a little clip for you guys who are watching at home so that you can go and check this out at prageru.com. Here's the clip.
It's funny because some people say, wow, Kirk, you know, if you didn't take that turn toward faith, think of all the great stuff you could have done. I have a nephew who said, Kirk, tell me you took advantage of the opportunities you had at 17 years old with all those girls who were falling all over you when you were on Growing Pains. You know, tell me you didn't waste that. And I'm like, bro, I found something so much better. I found a girl. She was beautiful on the inside. She was beautiful on the outside. I married her, and we've been married for 30 years. You have no idea how much more valuable that is, right? I've got 6 grown children who love God and still ask me my opinions about things, who still love to come home and be with me and my wife. And I'm on PragerU Stories of Us. I mean, the story doesn't really end much better than this. My daughter
There we
has
go,
a
guys. You guys can go and check that out by going to prageru.com/watch, and it is our newest release of Stories of Us. What was your filming like for Stories of Us, Kirk?
I was really excited because I'm a big PragerU fan.
Okay.
So just the idea that I got to be there was really exciting, and that was it was really kind of surreal because prior to that, Ben Shapiro over at the Daily Wire had asked if I could come on to the Sunday morning sync, and I thought, Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager, I'm like, I've arrived. I'm here. I'm with these guys that are doing such great work, and I was really honored to be a part of PragerU's latest stuff.
Yeah, I know that at the end of in the clip that we just played, you said, that it was incredible to be a PragerU and all that. That really means a lot to us, that you think so highly of us.
Well, the timing couldn't be more perfect. We need PragerU. We need the people who are supporting PragerU, and the way that you're getting to a young generation, coming from a father of 5 kids, I can't tell you how important it is and how much we need it right now. So thank you both for what you guys are doing.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Without spoiling all of the stories of us, just tell people a little bit who might want to know a little bit more about you, kind of, your path, your story, just a little bit of how you got here.
Well, I grew up in the ghettos of Detroit. No, I'm kidding. I
sold rocks for years.
No, it wasn't one of those stories. My dad's a PE teacher and a math teacher, and I had 3 younger sisters, grew up in Los Angeles, California when I was 9 years old. I was going to school like everybody else, and then my mom took me down to audition for a talent agent. And I started working on television and eventually got this role as Mike Seaver on a TV show called Growing Pains that went for 7 years. And then my sister, she lands this role of DJ Tanner on Full House. And Candace and I and our other sisters, we just kind of lived this fairy tale storybook kind of childhood growing up. And that led to all sorts of really interesting opportunities for me, which I talked about in Stories of Us, from being an atheist in Hollywood, turning to a rich faith in God, who I never believed in, and beginning to make decisions that were driven by that faith that took me in a very different direction from a lot of my peers. So I grew up with a lot of young men and women who are no longer here, or the path that they chose took them down a road that is very sad. And I'm looking back and I just sort of scratch my head and say, wow, like I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful that I had people, and I think God watching out for me in ways that I don't think I deserved, but I'm certainly thankful for.
I would love to unpack that a little bit more, because we so often hear the trend of child stars entering into Hollywood, and they do the exact opposite flip from what you have. They go from the nice, wholesome Christian maybe to doing drugs and partying all the time and getting in trouble with the police, and we see that descent of childhood stardom. You went the opposite route. How do you think that happened, and like what steps along the way did you take?
I know just what you're talking about because, like I said, I had friends that I auditioned with for the same roles, Corey Haim and River Phoenix and others who, even my best friend on Growing Pains, who've either, they're not here today due to suicide or drug overdose and other kinds of things. And I understand because you're a young person with all of the drive and all of the curiosity. And when you add, the influx of all kinds of money and popularity and opportunity to do whatever it is that you want, that can be a really deadly combination. And you have so many people who are profiting off of you and your success that they don't want to be the one who says no and put up, the guardrails for you. And so I understand it. And I think for me, at 14 years old, I'm on the TV show. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, did you have someone putting up those guardrails for you that you were just talking about?
When I look back now, Will, I see that my mom and dad raised us in kind of a traditional way. We weren't we didn't go to church. We weren't a Christian family, but they raised us to be healthy and to treat people nice and to be kind and do the right thing. And I think that helped a lot when I was little, but ultimately when I was on Growing Pains, that's where all the opportunities to go off the rails came. And it was right at that time that somebody took me to church. And I talked about this in Stories of Us. That's what really got me thinking about ultimate things. Things like there were kids coming to Growing Pains who were sick with cancer and had a very short time to live, and their wish was to meet the cast of the show. And those kinds of things of like, wow, all of us are going to die one day. And somebody took me to church, and I thought, wow, one day I'm going to find out if what these guys are saying at church is true. If there really is a God, if there's an afterlife, what happens when I step out of here? And how did the universe and everything that we are in awe of in this life come into being? Is it really all just by chance? Does none of it really matter? Is morality just something that we've made up, or does it really have consequence? And as I processed through a lot of that, I came to the place of just saying, I don't know, but if you're there, I want you to show me. Clearly, if you made my eyeballs and you know how these work, you could see me right now and you can hear me. Show me the truth, because I don't pretend to think I've got it all figured out. And that's what led me down a road that made me to start to trust in God and in His Word, the Bible. And that became my compass morally for the decisions that I made that ultimately took me to good places. So I don't credit myself for those things. It's not like what did I do? I kind of feel like I wasn't I feel like, what did God do? He saw that I was lost and He pointed me in the right direction.
Amazing. And you and Will share that sort of similarity in your journey, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I
Cool.
know exactly how that is for sure. I mean, I was in the same type of boat as you and was saved just about a year ago. We're a week away from my year anniversary of getting baptized and everything. So I feel exactly the same as you do.
What was that sitcom you were on? Was it Silver Spoons? No, it was. I forgot the name of it, but it was great. I loved you on that show.
No, the
Right.
fullest
In fact,
house.
The fullest house.
Yeah, no, the fullest
That's
house.
right.
Yeah.
I think my sister had a poster of you on her bedroom wall.
I mean, every woman did back then.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
we don't
Right.
remember much of those times. but
Yeah.
Right.
They were good
we have
times.
a lot in common, Will.
Yeah, exactly. No, my 6 kids and my house. I mean, it's amazing. You know. No, but that's a really powerful thing, because as someone who, again, went through something similar as you, I understand there's a lot of Christians and people out there, especially when they're still in those positions, that will say, you know, I'm trying to go to church and do these things, but it's very hard for them to actually live out the values, right? It's hard for all of us. We're all sinners. That's just by human nature. But a lot of people will claim to, you know, do what you do or say those same kind of things, but then they don't actually live it out to a large degree.
Yeah, because it's hard, right?
It is hard.
It's hard.
very
There's
hard.
there's consequences. I mean, you know, I all the things that we're dealing with today. You wonder why people make the decisions and cave and and compromise the way that they do. It's because there's consequences to our decisions, and I think what's been so helpful to me, and you tell me if you agree, is I think of the ultimate. The ultimate reward and the ultimate consequence. I think, man, if I can live my life for an audience of one person rather than trying to please an entire crowd, which is what I made my living doing as a sitcom actor. I'm always trying to please the crowd. If you're clapping, if you're laughing, I get paid, and I'm doing good. But that's a very difficult way to live, and ultimately, you don't have a moral anchor when you're trying to please everybody. But for me, I said, you know what? If I can live my life in a way that says I'm genuinely thankful that I'm alive, and that you see everything that's wrong with me, and you care about me and love me anyway, and that I can know my Creator, I'm down with that, and everything else can take a back seat.
Right. No, they're
That's
trying.
where I came down to.
It's people trying to appease other people instead of trying to appease God. You know, you are putting the values of other people ahead of what God actually thinks, right? Of what He wants you to do. And so because of that, then you have a lost people. And, you know, there's no doubts that I've made a lot of mistakes still, even after being baptized. It's not like I'm living some flawless life.
There was no magic in the water?
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just perfect, flawless person now. You know, no, but that's how it is. And these things are hard. But, you know, you could talk a little bit about this. Just you're older than I am, and definitely older than Amala. You don't look that old. I mean, you look good for
let's
Nice
save it.
recovery.
Yeah,
Nice
let's save
recovery.
that really
Yeah.
quickly.
for 70. You look good. You know,
I'm
fantastic.
growing the beard because I had a choice to make. I thought I could either go with the aging teenage actor, or I could go with the youthful mature man.
Right.
Right.
No, you.
Smart choice.
Yeah.
Youthful mature man.
Smart.
Right. Not a day over 25.
Solid. I like the
You look fantastic.
the way you thought that through. Yeah.
I just shaved my beard. So,
did you?
Yeah.
It's growing back.
It is, unfortunately. But we could be more similar in more ways.
He didn't have time to shave because he bumped into me at Chipotle today.
Exactly.
Well, I was
And didn't
shaving,
have time to
driving.
Yeah,
And it just,
yeah, right,
you know?
right.
But in terms of like, you, as someone who is older, you've dealt with a lot of things. You've gone through a lot. You've seen a lot of things. And knowing that this is a hard path to take, you know, how do you deal with something being so difficult? You know, like how do you deal with the difficulties of life? That's what we get asked a lot on the show. And I tell people, like, life is not supposed to be easy. Life is hard, and you have to be able to deal with those challenges and not be willing to just take the easy way out all the time. How do you deal with that?
Well, you know, I guess I could answer that question in a couple of different ways, but I could tell you that, you know, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I get out my Bible and I'm reading through King David's Psalms. And these are prayers of a guy who's going through very difficult times. He's surrounded by enemies and people who want to kill him. And I think, man, that's stress. I mean, I've got stress with 6 kids living in Hollywood, but it can get a whole lot worse than that. And so I like to surround myself with people who have wisdom and people who have experiences that put mine into context, whether it's, you know, somebody from the past like that, or whether it's people like Dennis Prager or pastor at my church, or friends who are older and have been down these roads before, and they can put my situations into context. And I realize, like, you know what? There are people who have it a whole lot worse.
Yep.
And if I'm consistent with what I say that I believe, I believe that this is actually, this difficulty is going to produce the character that I need to face the next challenge.
Exactly. Right.
You know? And that's good. And so there's a point to it. There's a purpose to it. It's not just like, oh no, this random horrible thing happened to me and it's not fair. I think, no, I think there's a purpose and a point to it.
Amazing. And you've been a pretty outspoken person, especially these last couple of years, the COVID-19 pandemic. At the start of this, you came out and, said, I don't want to be locked down in my house. I don't think it's the right way to do it. How did people react to you doing that, which I think is a very brave thing to do?
When Kirk Cameron becomes a dangerous person, something's wonky with the culture, right? Like, I was singing Christmas carols in a mall parking lot, inviting people around Christmas time to come sing with us, and TMZ's got their drones flying around, and I became, this dangerous person.
How dare you sing Christmas carols? How ridiculous is that?
Yeah, so I guess the problem is I'm listening to other people beside the mainstream woke media. So I'm listening to people like you guys, and I'm listening to friends of mine who are entrepreneurs and doctors that own urgent care centers all up and down California. I'm actually watching and listening to other sources that are telling me that there's a lot of political agendas going on here, and this is the way virology actually works, and this is what we know and don't know, and all that. And so I started to just think for myself and realize that I'm not going to live my life inside of a bubble to serve somebody's political agenda when I can see behind the curtain and see that there's so many lies going on, and people are starving for hope. They're starving for social interaction with people. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to turn this into a communist Christmas. I'm going to go outside in the fresh air, and I'm going to sing O Little Town of Bethlehem and invite whoever wants to come to come. And we did it, and we had tons of people. And then we did it again at New Year's down at the beach, and a lot more people came. And what people don't think about is nobody forced those people to come. Everybody came voluntarily. Everybody was there singing. They had smiles on their faces. They had a great time. And it's amazing how other parts of the country understand that. But you get into the left coast and the right coast, and all of a sudden you think the sky is falling and everybody's going to die.
Right. No, I like when you said Communist Christmas. It sounds like a punk band from the 80s.
Yeah.
The Communist Christmas, their new album just came out. It's good stuff. But you said that people, they came to the beach and they came to the supermarket all to sing on their own volition. No one had to make them.
That's right.
Why do you think they did that? What is the, because I think that there's a lack of meaning in people's lives right now. I think people are searching for something like that, something to give their lives a little bit more purpose. Why do you think that people would come to that?
Well, what we know is that there's a tremendous mental health crisis that's going on because of the way people have been isolated. And I think that there is immunity in community, one of the things that we've been saying for a while. And people want to be together with other people. And they also wanted to come out and say that we're not just going to be, trapped in this little bubble. This isn't a prison. We can go outside and we're in charge of our health care, not the government. And they wanted to make a statement about that.
And that's important. And it's important that people do what you've done in their communities, because so often people look at things and they go, well, I know that's wrong, but they're not willing to take that step to go out in the parking lot and sing some Christmas carols. As ridiculous as it sounds, that is such a defiant thing to do. People aren't willing to take that step. What is your advice to people who are sort of scared to be outspoken about what they believe?
Well, I understand the fear because there's consequences, and the powers that be have lots of power, and they can make things uncomfortable for you, and so can your family. But I think at the end of the day, I come down to I look at history and I see the direction that things are going, in this country that reminds me of very scary things that have happened in other socialist and communist countries. And I know that if we don't stand up now, there comes a time where you won't have the opportunity to anymore. It's like the old analogy of the frog being boiled in the pot of water. The water temperature rises so slowly, the frog doesn't realize what's happening. And by the time that he finally realizes, he's too tired to jump out of the pot because the heat has exhausted him. And so, again, it's why I appreciate, Prager, you and all that you guys are doing, because you're helping people to see that the water is warming up, and we need to stand up now, and we need to jump out of this this pot of boiling woke water.
Yeah. There was this clip on MSNBC the other day, and it was talking about, you know, parents getting involved and people getting involved all throughout the community, getting involved in local politics and school boards or precinct committeemen or poll watchers or any of these kind of things, people getting involved.
Yeah.
And these people, even the people on the like moderate right, are coming and saying that these are like domestic terrorists. They're saying that this is a threat to your democracy. And it's like, no, this is democracy. Right? Like people standing up and actually getting involved. That's what democracy is people coming and doing all of this. But they want to shame normal people into thinking like, oh, if you're a fighter, then you're doing too much and you're a terrorist now. Right? And that's like the fear that people are living with, is that they are going to get ostracized in some sort of community like that and get labeled as this, when all they want to do is protect the values that they have seen in this country for years and years that have now been squandered and destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You're exactly right. I think that there was a different breed of American hundreds of years ago that understood that the only thing required for evil to advance is for good people to do nothing. And they understood that, so they got involved. They understood that freedom is not inherited through the bloodstream. It's something that must be fought for and defended. And we've lived in our generation in such relatively peaceful times here in America that I think we've got to be retrained that wickedness is alive and well in the hearts of many people, and the lust for power and to consolidate that power and to control people just grows. That monster continues to grow, and it requires good people to do something. And if we all do a little bit, if we all do our part, like you guys are doing, like I'm trying to do from my backyard, making a campfire, singing Christmas carols, teaching through American history with people, emphasizing the foundational elements of faith and morality for a free society, I think that we can win it back.
I know we can. I feel it. I feel the energy with people. I know that most people I talk to, even people who are historically more on the left or, atheist type of people, will come and they'll say, this is just getting out of hand. This is too much, right? Most people, I think, are coming to that realization. But as like you were saying, the people who have the wickedness in their heart, they are just having to get more and more wicked to counteract the people who are standing up and actually waking up and realizing the truth. Right. So it makes it difficult. But that's when it is the most important to fight, is when it is the most difficult.
And what I like about what you guys do is I like that you're strong and you're bold and you're confronting the evil and the wickedness that you see in your world, but you're not doing it in a nasty, condescending way that is off-putting, right? Whereas I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to raise my voice. I don't want any kind of conflict. But evil must always be resisted. There has to be conflict. And to not resist it is evil in itself. And that's really not protecting your kids or your grandkids or your neighbors.
Oh, it was like that video of the guy in New York on the subway where that lady was getting attacked by a guy. Or it was in Chicago, and all these people just watch it happen. Yep. And none of them stand up to help this lady just getting absolutely attacked. Yeah. And it's like, when you don't stand up and do something, then evil is allowed to triumph. Yeah, it takes good people to stand up and be those heroes in the world, even if it's scary. You got to put yourself in a little bit of harm's way to be able to achieve something greatly.
And it helps to see examples that you guys provide, because we look at you and
You
we see
too.
you talking to people and you're like, oh, that was awesome. Okay, that wasn't rude. That was just truthful. And I could do that. Or maybe I can't do that, but you know what? At least I can talk to my kids about this, or I can not just let that go by unanswered the next time my relative says that at the dinner table. I've got a good answer for that now.
Right. That's actually a perfect segue into what I want to talk to you about, because you were ahead of the curve on what's taking a massive wave right now, and that's homeschooling. And you have a very big family that you run with your wife, and you decided to homeschool your children far before it was really a topic of discussion. And now with critical race theory and parents getting a look into what's happening in schools through COVID, a lot of parents are taking their kids out of school. I'm wondering, what is it that you saw back then that tipped you to the point of saying, you know what, I need to put my kids in homeschool. I want to teach them my values.
So it is really interesting. I think I want to say maybe since 2011 or 2012, I believe the number of families who have pulled their kids out of school and are educating them at home has quadrupled. And I think half of that growth has happened just since 2020. So this massive exodus out of the government school system, I think, is a great occasion for us to rejoice and have great hope, because parents are realizing not only are their kids being indoctrinated and brainwashed into a completely different ideology than most of us want our kids to have, but it's an opportunity to strengthen our families and to create the next generation of liberty-loving patriots, people of faith who will love God and love their neighbor and bring back the kind of American values that made us the freest, strongest, most prosperous and generous nation the world has ever known. Yeah. Home education is where it's at. If we don't take back education, we've lost.
Right. Well, you take it back yourself with what you're doing. You know, if the public schools fail you, then you have to take it back yourself.
And they're really not public schools, right? Let's be honest. They're government training camps.
Exactly.
Ultimately is what they are.
Exactly.
The local public community is not getting together deciding what should be in the textbooks. That stuff you were showing me earlier is not being, there's not a consensus that we ought to teach our kids that kind of stuff.
Gender elephant or whatever.
Yeah, let's actually pull that up so we can take a look at what's being taught. This is actually an LA school district here. The genderbread person. Yeah, not man. Person.
He's like gingerbread man.
Yes. Like gingerbread man.
Like gingerbread, but genderbread. And this is being taught at elementary schools here in LA district. So the genderbread shows at the top, the genderbread person's head is where your identity is. The heart is what you're attracted to. So sexuality, they're talking about sexuality to these young children. And below in the nether region is your sex. And all around you is the way that you express yourself. Now there's a video that was put out by the school district to train these teachers where young girls and boys talked about, well, I'm a girl and I like the color blue. I don't like the color pink. So that must mean that my gender is spectrumed and I lie somewhere in the middle. And the boys who like wearing skirts or like playing with dolls also express some sort of non-binary form of gender. And that's what's being taught in our schools these days.
That's why you abolish the public schools.
Will loves that.
That's my line.
That.
You know, there's a very telling and terrifying quote from Adolf Hitler, and I know whenever you'd ever want to go to the Hitler example, but one of my favorite quotes from him was, he said, when people resist the things that he was teaching, he would say, it really doesn't matter to me whether you agree with me or not. I have your children in my schools, and in 30 years, that will be the only community that they will have ever known, and you'll be gone.
Right.
If you can get a hold of the textbooks, if you can present these concepts of identity and purpose and value, and you're willing to be patient and play the long game, you win the culture.
100%. No doubt. They knew that in the public schools is where they indoctrinate all of the people of this country.
Yeah.
They know that getting in there and telling kids about the gender stuff or the race theory or pandemic stuff with masks, I mean, all of that is how they control the masses. I mean, it's all according to plan, it feels like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%, and it is. So if we study history, we see that there were those from John Dewey and others who were these progressives who decided that they would play the long game, and they would have this slow march through the institutions to take over the culture, and they would do that by overturning the family, by infiltrating the church, getting into education and higher education, and we see that everywhere. And now that you can add big tech to that and big pharma to that and big government to that, wow, that's a powerhouse monster that's tough to defeat. Which makes this very exciting times for you and I to live in.
Yeah, but you're defeating it. You're defeating it because you took it. Again, it's hard. It's hard to do, but you took the power into your own hands. And you said, I'm going to raise my children the right way. I'm not going to let some state institution teach my children nonsense. I am going to make sure that they have the right values and know how to critically think and think for themselves.
And your son is here today, by the way.
That's right.
One up, James.
James, if you want to say hi.
How's it going?
Yeah, you survived homeschooling. You got out on the other end, it seems like. Yeah.
Did your teacher bully you?
A little bit. From third grade up until like ninth grade.
I wasn't the teacher. I was the disciplinarian.
Yeah.
So when he was bad, he got sent to my office.
Right. Well, it seems like he turned out. So, guys,
Yeah,
let's not knock on homeschooling.
that's like
he's a pretty great guy.
He made it all the way to a PragerU internship, so
That is
got
very
that going.
true.
Exactly.
Our
He was
former
our
intern.
with Will Amala Live last year, just a few months ago.
Yeah, just a few months ago, which was a great help.
Great
Really,
help. We miss you dearly.
If people want to save America, focus on your own family first. You know, if we focus on our own families, that's chain reactions to be able to be grassroots and get out and influence a lot more people. Then we can do a lot of good. But when parents give up the fight for their kids' values to the government or to the schools or whatever it is, or to the mainstream media or some professor, then we lose the fight because you have to keep doing that over and over and over again.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. What I've learned from studying history and some great wise friends of mine. Our founders understood that the secret that made America so unique, it really started with the Great Awakening. When the heart is changed, people, they have a different set of values, and they're able to be responsible with freedom. And they understood that a nation needed to be built from the bottom up and from the inside out, rather than a king or a queen that would just sort of assemble an army, round up a bunch of people, make rules and enforce them. You see this in authoritarian nations. They were like, no, let's say that God rules in our hearts. We want to do the right thing. We want to treat our neighbors as ourselves. And then we take care of our family first. And then as families, we begin to take care of one another, and we're going to take care of the poor and the needy. And we are the family of faith, and we are the welfare system within our local communities. And then we have local government, and then we ultimately will elect people from within our communities with character to take in these leadership roles in civil government, but they're going to be accountable to us, and they're going to have our consent. And if they actually break their covenant with their neighbors, with those that they've been entrusted to take care of, we're going to replace them, because that wouldn't be keeping our communities safe if we let them continue to rule. But that's a very unique concept in the history of the world. And we've been pushing all of that aside, wanting to be like other nations. And we've been lied to, and we've gotten lazy, and we need to get back to it and do it quick, or we're going to lose it.
I know, it's like during the French Revolution. I mean, they asked us for help, right? They asked us for help on how to do a constitution, and now we're looking at Western Europe as like the ideal model. And it's like, why we want to work? You know, people in Western Europe, they don't even work, and now we want to be like them. It's ridiculous. And Thomas Jefferson, I mean, he said that you should only have public schools in America if they have the Bible in them, if they're teaching the Bible. And now you have strayed so far away from that it's unrecognizable from the situation that you were just talking about how it was supposed to be set up. It's not even close to what it was.
So that all happened on our watch. You guys are younger than I am, but it's happened on my watch. It's happened on my parents' watch. And for the last 50 to 100 years, we've allowed this to slip through our fingers. And so I think it's important for us to shift our thinking. Instead of saying, those guys, these terrible people over there on the other side of the political aisle or the ideological fence, they're the problem. I would say, no. if termites have infected my house and I got rats and roaches living in my kids' rooms, you're going to look at me and go, Kirk, what are you doing? Right? Wake up, step up. This is happening on your watch. If my marriage falls apart, I have to take some responsibility and say, you know, this wilted and got to where it is while I was supposed to be on watch. And I think in America, we have to say, wait a minute. We didn't used to be the subculture, the ones who are being we didn't used to be viewed as the villains. The people of Judeo-Christian values and faith, people who celebrated liberty and limited government, we were the ones who were leading the culture and designing the nation, and we were prospering. And somehow on our watch, we've gotten lazy and let that fall away. And so the good news about that is that we are also the ones who have the solution. It's not so much about getting rid of those who oppose us as much as we just need to wake up and start doing what we did before, I think.
I
think it's exactly
completely
right.
agree.
Yeah. To my European friends, I do think you work. unless
right, I was gonna say, you gonna walk back on that?
We've had a few angry commenters react to
unless you live in Spain, you guys have siestas and things. But for the rest of you guys in Europe, you're great.
Goodness. Now, Kirk, you brought up something that I want to touch on. That's like my favorite thing to talk about. You brought up marriage, okay? And you've been in a very long, successful marriage with Chelsea, and you talk about that in your Stories of Us. Again, you guys can watch that at prageru.com, our latest episode. Marriage doesn't seem to be the norm anymore, and you, as a Hollywood star, decided, you know what, marriage is for me, and that's so much better than the sort of hookup culture that people are talking about now and pushing for these days. What precipitated that decision for you?
To get married? So I met my wife on the set of Growing Pains. Actually, that's not true. I met my wife on the set of my sister Candace Cameron's show, Full House. And she was there visiting someone, and I saw her, and I thought, wow, how beautiful that girl is. And my mom said to me later, she said, you know, that girl's come down a few times, and I've gotten to know her. In fact, she is more beautiful on the inside than she is on the outside, and I'm hoping one day you marry someone just like her. So it turns out a year later, she's on my show, Growing Pains. We become a boyfriend and girlfriend on the show, and within a year, I propose to her. We get married.
Lucky guy.
How perfect is that?
Yeah,
that's incredible.
And like I had mentioned in Stories of Us, I have people who are like, oh, tell me all the juicy stories about when you were 17, 18. I'm like, you know, it's very interesting. I know you're going to think that this sounds crazy, but like, I skipped past so much of that stuff, and I got the better end of the deal. I've got this wonderful, lifelong friend, Chelsea, and for 30 years, we've lived this awesome life, and we've got 6 kids, and 4 of them are adopted. And my wife herself, she's an adopted child, and we're making movies about adoption and pro-life and homeschooling and all the things that I'm passionate about, things that I love. And I think, man, I could have missed it so easily. I could have missed it. I could have just said, no, I want to play the Hollywood game a little bit longer, and I would have missed the best things in my life. I'm just super grateful, and my advice to people is man, if you do the right thing over the long haul, you win. Do the right thing over the long haul, and you win. Don't sell out the greatest reward by doing the wrong thing in the short term for a quick thrill, because you could miss out on something awesome.
That is fantastic advice.
Beautiful,
I was going to say, like, how did you feel about young... How do you feel about the narrative right now that young women and men are seeing that they shouldn't focus on marriage? They should just go through the dating and the hookups and all that, and that's so much more fulfilling, if not empowering, than being married. That seems to be a pretty commonplace narrative these days.
Yeah, I understand. And what I would say is those who think that, they have such a low view of marriage and such a low view of relationships. And what they don't understand is that there is sacred treasure there. There's life there that you know nothing of, because you've been lied to and told that there's something quicker, faster, better, more thrilling. And I said, no, you can't touch what I have unless you go through life together and you struggle together and you go through the hard and difficult things together. That's where I think that's where love is. That's where the treasure is. And marriage for us has been great. I know that that's not been everybody's experience, and I give Chelsea most of the credit because I think the most challenging thing about my marriage is me. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense.
Are you guys married? Are either of you married?
Taylor is recently married out of the three of us.
Yeah.
There
okay.
we go.
Right. Not yet.
Will and I are not.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
yet.
Are we getting close? No? Any
Maybe.
prospects?
Prospects, yes.
Prospects? Okay.
Prospects, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if Will would answer the same.
That's right.
But
That could
That's
be.
right.
Will, are you all right?
Yeah. Your
I'm
boy.
great.
Okay.
Yeah. Your boyfriend or your girlfriend could be listening right now, so I don't want to
That's
I don't want to
true.
put you in hot, in the
Don't
hot
worry.
seat.
Don't worry.
I'm not the toughest interviewer you've ever had. I'm
No,
sure.
please,
No,
I'm sweating.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
On your own show, no less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's coming on to grill us on our own show. Make sure we get married soon.
Hey, don't wait. Oh my goodness.
No, I agree. There's no reason to wait.
That's
There's
right.
no reason. If you're in love with a person and you think that it's right, why not? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly worked out well for me. I got married when I was 20,
Right.
and my kids have gotten married pretty young. But I understand. It's like there's just a whole different mentality right now, and it's like I gotta get this under my belt. I gotta do this. I gotta have I gotta have fun before I really settle down. I'm like, oh man, I can't think of anything more exciting than growing up together, traveling the world together, going on adventures together, and learning together when you're young and you've got all this energy. Like how cool and exciting is that?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we did, and super glad.
I wanted to show the picture that you sent me of your just beautiful family here.
Thanks. I'm gonna look at it again.
Yeah. If you have anything you want to say, just go for it. It's such a beautiful photo. You've created such just like a big,
we sort of
wonderful
look
family.
like a Benetton ad there, right? And like we've got like every color
right,
of the
right.
rainbow there.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
It's beautiful. So we have 6 kids. 3 of them were married, and my daughter Anna just got married in November, and I had the privilege of playing a challenging dual role of both the father of the bride and the minister at her wedding.
That's got to be nerve-wracking.
It was nerve-wracking. It was really nerve-wracking. And I'm not a minister, so like I'm not ordained to do this. But I pulled it off. It went great. I didn't mess up his name.
Right.
That's
And
important.
That is
very
the important part.
Yeah.
Very important
Yeah.
because that's videotaped.
You don't want to marry her to the wrong guy.
No,
Right,
no, not at all. And my other daughter, Bella, is also married to a great guy, Justin. But because they got married in the middle of the pandemic, I had to watch their wedding on my laptop through Zoom. So that was pretty
Right.
pretty
It's pretty
different.
different. Yeah.
Different. So we're hoping we get a redo on that. Maybe we get a mulligan, this summer, and we can have
should.
a real wedding.
Yeah, redo the ceremony.
That's right.
Definitely.
She didn't get to wear a dress yet,
Oh.
and it was expensive.
Right.
So we want to.
Oh, yeah.
I want to walk her down the aisle.
Yeah.
Definitely
No,
redo
make
that.
use of it for sure.
And then after that, you got 3 more to go.
And I've got 3 more to go.
Just 3 more.
James.
You married?
James is available over there. He's single.
Let's put the camera on him again.
That's it. Look at this
Ladies.
guy.
We'll drop his hat in the comments, his handle.
That's right.
That is amazing. So great. We have one last segment to do with you, Kirk Cameron. Today, we're going to react to some crazy TikToks that we found on the internet. Are you familiar with TikTok? Are you in this realm of social media?
I told you I've got 6 kids. I get TikTok videos sent to me every single day.
Okay,
I bet.
I
great.
love TikTok videos.
Fantastic. You're probably not going to love these, but
I'm probably not going to
you're
love these.
probably not going to love these. But I'm glad that you love TikTok. Here's TikTok number 1. This is from a teacher, a non-binary teacher. So here we
My
go.
name is Magistra Y. I'm non-binary, and I am a high school teacher. So today I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what I've done and what my school has done to make me feel comfortable out as non-binary at my school. The first thing is really easy. I wear a pronoun pin every day. This works as a visual cue for my students. When I introduced myself to my students, I also gave them some example sentences for those students who weren't as familiar with using they, them pronouns. So I told them, you could say, oh, I have Magistra Y's class next. They teach Latin. I wanted to have a few visual cues
plural?
in my classroom
Yes,
to show
they is
students
plural.
that it is a welcoming and inclusive place. So one of the things I did was I put a pride flag on my desk. I'll take a pause here and say I am very, very lucky to teach at the school I teach at. They are very openly devoted to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Those are some of the things that I've done, but what about my school? I use the title Magistra instead of Mr. or Miss, and the IT team actually managed to code it into the system, so anytime my name pops up, it comes up with Magistra Y instead of Mr. or Miss.
Magistra?
What does that mean?
Really
I've never heard of that.
questions
I'm just going to
about-
pause. There's so much here, so much to unpack.
That makes me want them to bring back the 60-second limit on TikTok.
I know, seriously.
Cut her off.
Jeez.
Cut her off, bartender. You're right. They is plural. So I hope she's not teaching English or grammar. But this is what schools look like in a lot of states in this nation right now.
See how every single thing she said was about her?
Yes.
Not one thing she said was about the students
I
and
think
them being taught?
The one thing I got out of that is that she teaches Latin. And I wish I'd learned some Latin watching this instead of learning her pronouns and her orientation.
Uh-huh.
And it's very unfortunate.
It was unfortunate. There's nothing about teaching kids in that entire video.
Yep.
All it is just her own personal whatever that she wants to put out as her vanity to the world.
Yeah. And this is the new normal. I bet she's giving out genderbread men. Oh, sorry, persons.
Yeah,
Genderbread
please,
persons
Amala.
to her students. So it seems like you were ahead of the curve on this. If your kids were in school right now, this might be one of the situations that they were in.
Yeah, shocking, stunning,
brave.
And because how do I even react to that?
You get
I
used
guess
to
the
it
question
after
that
a while.
comes to my mind is, how did we let this happen?
Mm-hmm.
How did we let this happen? And it makes me want to go join the school board. Makes me want to say I need to get involved. We can't. I mean, what's next? Where does this kind of thing lead?
Yep.
It only gets worse.
Yeah, as it gets more and more accepted. And now what the parents that come and speak out about this stuff in their schools are labeled domestic terrorists by the DOJ. So it's just an ever tangled web that we keep getting into. And yeah, it's hard. Parents, you have to show up to your school boards and run for school board seats.
Yep.
And be the person in your community that's making change and calling it out.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Just do something. We've got to get off the defense and get onto the offense.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't just sit back and complain and say, "Oh my goodness, did you see what they're doing now? Oh, where's the world going?" And you know, let me call out some Christians here for some bad thinking. There are some people, and the Christian community is the community that I'm most familiar with, and it may not just be that community, but there's a community of people that say, you know, look how bad things are getting. You know, it's terrible. In fact, and we know that things are just going to get worse and worse, and so we're just sort of watching it all unfold as it's meant to, and that becomes an excuse not to do anything about it. And so you create this self-fulfilling prophecy, not knowing that, no, the idea is to actually go create the culture, not just cower and run from the culture and wait for the whole thing to fall apart because you think you're going to get taken up to heaven and not have to deal with all this stuff. But it's to actually create the culture that you want to see for your kids and your grandkids, which means we need to get off the defense and get on the offense.
Yeah, Taylor, this is something that you can sort of speak to. You said you had a run-in with sort of progressivism in the church that you weren't super happy about, and you actually did something.
Yeah, one of my church locally here was starting to use some of this woke language, and I think we had a prayer for our Latinx brothers and sisters, and they started this diversity team, and it was some of the resources that they listed on the website were these very obviously influenced by this postmodern neo-Marxist wave of from the Frankfurt School, woke critical theory and all that stuff. And it's not just something, we talk about critical theory in school curricula, but this is happening in the church as well. And I've seen a lot of pastors whom I respected have been very silent on this, and some have even become friendly to it. And I don't know, a lot of it seems it's unwittingly so. They think it's just like the kind or nice thing to do is to kind of give the benefit of the doubt. But like you're saying, it's if we just retreat to our Chick-fil-A, Tim Tebow, and that, bang that drum, and we'll be safe in our little bubble. The bubble keeps shrinking, and before you know it, you've completely lost the culture. And I think this woke thing in the church is one of the things that I'm most concerned with as a believer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know the times are tough for a lot of people, financially speaking, definitely, and it's hard. But a lot of the stuff that you can do is free. Like, you can go and talk to the elders of your church, the deacons of your church, and talk to them. You can go to the school board. Just giving a couple of hours a week to go and do these kind of things, it's free. It doesn't cost anything. You can go and do it. You can be that change. There's no excuses anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And again, the stuff that you guys are doing with your podcast, the stuff that Charlie Kirk is doing, and Will, you're going to be with Charlie tonight at a church out near us, and you guys give great ideas on things that we can do that don't cost money. They cost us our time, and we need to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely. One more TikTok here before we close out, and this is a video from 1943. See if it rings true to what we're dealing with today.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable buildups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind." In 1943,
Does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's a trap that we actually fall into on both sides. A lot of conservatives go and label leftists as the super extreme things when not all of them are, and I think we see it more so on the left than ever before. And it is a trick of language. Look how long Will and I and Taylor and Kirk have been called conspiracy theorists in regard to the COVID-19 pandemic and the things that we believe in our daily lives. And it turns out not to be true. But once you've set out these labels on somebody, once you've labeled that extreme word of fascist or Nazi or white supremacist, as I've been called, which is hilarious, the word loses meaning. Yeah, white supremacist. Can you believe that?
I can believe it.
Yeah, I can believe
I can
it.
definitely believe
Yeah.
it. She's half white.
I'm half white, so half of myself hates the other half.
Exactly.
And it's
No,
just
it's
an
totally
ongoing
fair.
battle every day. Yeah, but these words lose meaning as you continue to call people them and throw them out at people who you simply are labeling them as that because you disagree with them. And I'm sure you've had your fair run-in of being called those names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We talked a little bit about that earlier.
When he saw me at Chipotle, I mean, that's what I was saying as soon as I saw him.
Yeah. I forgot about the laugh track.
We should have been using it this whole time.
The only person who laughs at my jokes is the laugh track.
Yes,
Taylor does.
very true.
All right, sorry, guys.
So isn't it amazing how important language is? Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing that if you can simply control words, you can control the way that people think? And I think that's why entertainment is so important. Movies, music, television. These aren't just places that we go to relax and escape with make-believe stories. They're actually culture-shaping tools that are very effective at altering hearts and minds. And I think that they've been used very effectively by the woke crowd to create the new normal. And then the rest of us are sort of reacting to it. And what we need to be doing is, instead of saying, "Oh, shut off your TV," just don't go see those movies. What we need to be doing is saying, "No, we need to start making the media that is going to create the kind of world that we want for our kids." We need more filmmakers. We need more television producers. We need more people to enter the music industry, because that's what shapes our culture. That's how we tell our stories. That's how we know who the good guys and the bad guys are, what good ideas and bad ideas are all about. And so those of us who have a solid moral and spiritual foundation, and when I say solid, I'm talking about the one that built this country. And if we want to see that kind of culture again, we need to stop retreating from the areas that scare us. We need to run to them and take them over and take them back.
Yeah. Well, like entertainment, all that stuff. I mean, those people on the left are following Alinsky's rule for radicals and then getting into all these places and taking them over. They knew what they were doing. And by the time the conservatives realized that this is what's happening, it's too late. Yep. And now we're playing catch up. But we have to play that catch up. We have to be ready for that fight. And you're doing that fight, man.
And I think this is an exciting time to live. This is the kind of culture that where heroes are created. You don't get a George Washington. You don't get those kinds of Bravehearts without really difficult circumstances. And not that I want to be in Braveheart's shoes, but those stories that inspire us always take place during times of great challenge and difficulty. And so whoever's out there listening, heroes are needed. 100%. Men and women of character and faith and courage are wanted. Please apply.
I wake up every day with seeing when things are getting like worse in some ways. I wake up every day just full of fire. That's awesome, that I used to not feel like that, but now seeing more and more, I feel passionate when I wake up and say, well, now I see this happening. That means that I can talk about it. That means I can go fight against it. That means that I can be someone to try and be this hero in this world. It makes me feel better in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's never been a better time to make a difference. There's never been an easier time to make a difference when you see all of your friends and the entire culture heading off the cliff. All you have to do is say no. All you have to do is stand there and don't go with them. Mm-hmm. And you're already making a difference. And there's not that many people who are willing to do it. Most people, unfortunately, they prefer to run with the crowd. Mm-hmm. They don't want to stand out. And again, you guys are setting a great example of that. And anybody can do it. You just have to know who you are and why you're here. If you get that nailed down, then just be willing to do the right thing, and you'll make a difference. Oh, and you'll inspire others to do the same thing.
Oh, Amala was just some kid. I was just some kid, but even more stupid. And now we're able to do all this. It's really cool, to be that. Just like anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. And not everyone can do it at the same level, of course, but there's always something you can do. It's that old quote, not everyone can help everyone, but everyone can help someone.
That's right.
Right? It's like everyone has a part to play. Everyone has something that they can do, and you do watching. You do.
That's right. And you guys have a gift of being able to speak and talk and use your words to communicate ideas to help the rest of us understand. And not all of us can do what you do, but each one of us has a group of friends, some people in our family that you guys are never going to impact because they don't listen to your show. But I can impact them because I get my hair cut over at that guy's salon, or I go to work with these people over here. I go to school with these people over here, and no one's going to impact them as effectively as I could if I just do my part.
Right.
Do your part,
people have
guys.
amazing gifts.
Yes, they do. A beautiful way to close out the show, Mr. Kirk Cameron.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on the show. This is awesome, and I consider this my son's show too because he was here with you for for a month.
Shout out to James.
It's a shout out to James, ladies.
Ladies,
still available an hour later.
Hit him up. Don't leave him hanging there.
The matches are flying in.
Kirk Cameron, how can people support you?
How can you support me? You know what I would love. On Facebook and Instagram, I'm doing this thing called the American Campfire Revival. And essentially, during President Biden's first 100 days in office, I had sort of a counter plan of 100 days for the family of faith. And I began to teach the principles that made America the exceptional, amazing place that it is. And I began to pray together with people on Facebook and Instagram. And we have done this now for a year, and we've grown as a community, and I'd love for you to join me there. Check out what we're doing. Just go to my Instagram page or Facebook page, and every night, 5 nights a week, I'm live from my backyard. I make a campfire, and I've gotten really good at making campfires, and we have a great time together talking about how to bring revival to our hearts, our homes, and our nation.
I want to come to one of those.
Yeah, come on, let's go.
I'll come over. Are there s'mores?
Yeah.
Why you said you kind of hesitated?
Well, sometimes s'mores, sometimes cigars. It kind of depends on the night.
Will likes both.
I love both.
All right.
So
So that's on the books.
Listen, did I just invite myself to Kirk Cameron's house?
Yes, you did.
Yes, I definitely did.
Well,
And no
ever since
shame.
we bumped into each other at Chipotle, we're buds now.
Best friends.
I know. No, but seriously, Kirk, you're on fire, man. You're doing incredible work. We really, really appreciate you. I mean, to be in your position and to do what you do, really, like that is an incredibly brave thing. Not many people will choose that life and to do it, and you have said, I am going to do it. I'm going to be brave and stand up this way. You're an incredible guy, really.
Well, you're very kind, and I also want to thank you for giving me your book, How to Win Friends and Influence Enemies. I'm really excited to read this. Too bad you don't have any good commendations on the back. Let's see, Dennis Prager, Candace Owens, and James O'Keefe.
Just a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of...
Could use more.
That's right, and I can't wait to read this. Thanks. I hope everybody reads it.
Thank you, man. Hey, I didn't pay him
He didn't
to
even
say
have
that.
to do it himself.
I know. I didn't even have to plug my own book.
And
He did
look
it
at
for
this.
me.
You got a donkey and an elephant. Are they roasting marshmallows over a campfire?
You know, see that it
What
was
is
all
that?
part of the plan to get
That's
over
it. It
to
looks
your
like they're having
place to have
s'mores.
s'mores.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's a long set plan.
it's been in the works for years.
We'll keep you updated
Finally.
on when Will gets to have this
I
campfire
know.
with
This
Kirk
is
Cameron.
like some Goldfinger Operation Grand Slam
we should
type
do
of
a
thing.
show live from the campfire
There you
sometime.
go.
I
in
would
the
love that.
backyard.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. Well, we'll keep you guys posted on when that happens. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single day when we go live. That is 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Also, share this episode with a friend, a family member, a peer, someone that you love. Get them educated and get them talking about the issues of today's time. If you'd like to listen to this episode, go to Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Podcasts. Follow us there. Give us a 5-star review to let other people know you love the show. Let us know you love the show. And comment down below what was the most important thing that was said during the episode today, because there was a lot of large pieces of wisdom that you guys can carry with you throughout your lives. We're going to be back tomorrow, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. We'll see you then. Hi, everybody. Very special guest on the show today. You saw his face on our show last week because we reacted to his appearance on Dr. Phil. You also know him from being a host at the Daily Wire and being a children's bestseller now. We have Matt Walsh. Matt, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Talk a little bit about the reaction from the Dr. Phil. Has it been mostly positive, mostly negative? I mean, I've been just looking at your Twitter and seeing people very split on this. What has the reaction been from your point of view?
You know, honestly, it's been surprisingly, overwhelmingly positive from what I've seen. I mean, I expected more of a clear split between left and right. And of course, you know, a lot of the liberals are mad, but just looking even, I looked recently at Dr. Phil's own YouTube page, and not that it's a scientific view of it necessarily, but it seems even there, majority of the comments are kind of on my side. So it's been more overall positive than I expected. So I'm somewhat encouraged for the first time in a while by that.
What about from conservatives? Has it been pretty clear cut on that? Pretty much all the conservative side is supporting you, or has there been much disagreement there?
Not that I've seen. I mean, and that's not because conservatives usually are very happy to criticize me if they see a reason or opening. But at least when it comes to discussion actually on Dr. Phil itself, I think that if you're conservative and you found any reason to criticize the notion that, you know, women can give birth and men have penises, which is basically what I'm arguing, then you really have to look within yourself. So it's been, you know, there hasn't been much of that I've seen.
I'm curious, one of the big sort of gotcha moments in your appearance was when you asked them to describe what a woman was. And they had a really, really hard time giving you a definition for that. Why do you think the transgender community and those that support that community have such a hard time defining what it means to be a woman?
Well, it's just the fundamental incoherence of their position, I think, that you know, this goes down to there's this tension really that you find with what they were saying about quote unquote gender. And that's why I think it's important, by the way, when we talk about this, then this is what I tried to clarify on the show, that we use these words gender and sex kind of interchangeably, but for most of human history, and especially in the English language, you would have just talked about sex, male and female. Gender is a linguistic term. And only in the last, 60 or 70 years have we decided that people also have genders as well. But then if you look at it, it's interesting, for decades after that point, we were told that, gender is a social construct, and really it's something that we have to kind of break down and get away from. But now what you hear from the trans advocates and from the trans agenda is that, well, if a boy partakes in the artificial construct of femininity, then that means that he actually is a girl. And so they actually are they're giving more weight to the so-called social construct than anyone ever did before. And so that's just the incoherence of the view, where they're holding these different ideas that don't really work together. And all you have to do is start pulling at that thread a little bit, and it all just kind of collapses.
Why the big push? I mean, why is it such a stark issue right now that so many people get so vitriolic about? I mean, seeing the reaction from these people who you were on the show with getting so absolutely angry. I mean, and you talked about on your show about these people's intentions, and you weren't entirely sure if these people had the best intentions with what they were doing. Do you think that most of these people who believe this have good intentions and they're trying to help the world and make it into this more progressive place where people can be free to be whatever gender they want? Or do you think that it is for more of the selfish, egotistical intentions where this is something to make themselves feel good?
Yeah, no, I think they have evil intentions for sure. I don't think that there are good intentions here at all. I also don't believe that most of the people who claim to believe this actually do, which is why they can't even begin to defend it. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. There might be a very small minority of people who are, mentally ill and just basically crazy and really do think that, for example, men can give birth. But I think that portion of people is very, very, very small. There's a much greater portion that are actually pushing these ideas, and I don't think they really believe it. And I do think that it's evil intentions. And when I say evil intentions, by the way, I'm not talking about from like these are super villain comic book characters where in their own heads they're telling themselves, oh, I'm evil, and so I want to do an evil thing. That's not how evil people operate in the real world. So when I say evil intentions, what I really mean are selfish intentions, where you're worried about yourself and you don't really care about the cost. And we talked about in Dr. Phil. And a lot of this part of this conversation was cut, and I think a lot of that was just for time. They cut a lot of stuff, but we talked quite a bit about the problem of girls being sexually assaulted in the bathroom, and also, and this whole portion was cut from the program. We also talked about women being raped in prisons by males who are put into female prisons. This is a big problem, and it's happening. And I brought this up to the other side, and there's no other way to put it than they just don't care. They just don't. For them, that is a cost worth paying, as long as they get their way ideologically and they get to feel better about it. And I don't know how else to describe that other than evil. I mean, if you're okay with girls getting raped in a bathroom, or a woman being locked in a prison cell with a male sex offender, if you're okay with that, it's just not possible to have good intentions and it result in that.
Yeah,
it's one thing to be ignorant. It's one thing to be ignorant and not know the information about what's going on. It's a whole nother thing to see what's happening in front of you and say, my agenda is greater than these people's lives. That's what it really boils down to. Yeah, and I think we got into a healthy debate on the show over that use of the word evil and whether or not that pertains to people like that. Because typically, I used to be a former leftist and I'm also a woman. So I tend to be the more compassionate out of the two of us when it comes to our show. And I tend to think that the people on the ground here that are pushing this transgender ideology do not have evil intentions, or in many ways, like Will would say, are ignorant to what their ideology and what their push for that ideology truly means in the real world. But I'm curious, what else got cut from your interview? Because if I had seen the parts where you talked about women being abused and these women in prisons, I think that might have influenced the way that I looked at the two people you were talking to.
Yeah, there was a lot. It was mainly a big, and I'm trying to remember everything that was in, because it was a longer conversation and things get cut down. By the way, when I say things are cut, I'm not accusing Dr. Phil's people of doing it for ideological reasons. Actually, I think I kind of went into it expecting that I didn't know what was going to happen, but I found them to be quite fair, and I was impressed by that. But like I said, things just it's a long conversation. They cut things out because they stuff in a lot of commercials. It was a lot of that about the sexual assault. And then there was also an exchange that I had with the mother at the end, who's raising a quote unquote genderless child, where I asked her, would you, because she was bragging about the fact that she's going to let her child choose his own gender. And I said, well, would you let him choose his own race also? And if not, why? And she said she wouldn't dignify that question with an answer. And they cut that part too, unfortunately. So, but it was mainly the things about sexual assault. And this is a conversation, of course, that's happened a lot. And I brought this up quite a bit to the other side. And they're not going to come out and just say it like this. But the reality is that they know that it happens. You can't deny that it happens. It is happening. And so it's just a cost, and they think it's worth paying. And also, even getting aside, I brought this point up too. I can't remember if I made it into the final cut or not. But we could talk about the women who are physically abused, and that happens. Much more common, though, you have women and girls who are really uncomfortable sharing these intimate spaces with men. And they're saying, even if nothing's happened to them physically, they just are really uncomfortable with it. They don't like it. They feel like their privacy is being infringed on. And what the other side tells us is that, well, you feel that way. But on the other hand, we have this small minority of trans people, and it would make them feel bad if they're not allowed into these spaces, and their feelings take priority over yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with them telling me that I'm transphobic because I don't want to date a trans woman. Yeah. It's like that makes absolutely no sense. You're putting those people's feelings above the feelings that have been constant in humanity for the last, 2,000 years, something like that. What has been the main strategy when you've seen this and talked to people? I'm curious if your clip and all of this have been able to change people's minds. Have you heard from people and said, I watched the clip on Dr. Phil, I watched you and your arguments, and it turned me to the other side, or at least opened up my mind to some sort of new way of thinking? Have you seen a lot of that?
I think when it comes to this issue, if you're talking to someone who's fully invested in it, like the people that I was on stage with, you're not going to change their mind in an instant in one conversation. I never had any illusion that there's anything that I could have said that would make the guy with the dress and the beard just say, you know what, you're right, never mind, and give up. So that's not going to happen. All you could do with that is just maybe plant some seeds, hopefully, that will sprout into rational thought later in life. I think what the people that we can really reach are just normal people who are not intensely ideological, who do understand the difference between males and females, but they find themselves suddenly living in a culture where everywhere they go, this other viewpoint is being shoved down their throats, and they're being berated constantly, that they have to abandon everything that they thought they knew about biology and science and reality. And I think there are a lot of people like that who they know the truth, but they're starting to feel kind of confused and bewildered by it. And so I think those are people who you can pull back from the brink, and you can say, no, you were right. You're right about this, and and that's okay. And this is the right view. And I think those are the people that we're hopefully reaching. It's sort of like you're giving people permission to just have common sense and be sane, I suppose.
Right. And I think where a lot of conservatives tend to jump in on the issue is when it starts to affect children, which we've been seeing now across the nation in public schools, children being taught about this gender theory and sexual identity at really inappropriate ages. Now, you came out with a book called Johnny the Walrus, and it's funny because when you Google search it, it says Johnny the Walrus, best-selling LGBTQ author. So I think that's hilarious. What do you think we can do to stop this ideology being taught to our children in schools? What should parents be doing? What should educators be doing?
Well, parents, fortunately, there are a lot of parents already doing the right thing. And I think, number one, the best thing that you can do if you're able to do it is to get your kids out of the public school system, get them out of the government school system entirely, and rescue them from it, because we're not at a point where we can trust the government school system. We'll never be able to trust the government school system because the government school system exists to condition children to be the sorts of people that the powers that be want them to be. That's why the government school system exists. So that's the best thing you could do. And we are seeing that trend more and more, where homeschooling is becoming more and more popular. I think through the shutdowns and everything, with the school system shutting down, all they did was prove to a lot of parents that, you know what, we don't actually need you. I can do this myself. That's the best thing. But unfortunately, there are people who, because of their financial situation, they're not able to stay home or whatever, and so they have to send their kids into the school system right now. And if you have to, then the next best thing to do is to be very, very involved, and to want to know, to demand to know every single thing your kid's being taught. And we're seeing that with the school board movements across the country. Because once this stuff is exposed and once it's out there in the open, I think people really start to understand, how bad it is.
I think the left has overplayed their hand. I think that when it comes to these mandates, when it comes to the gender theory, all of the other nonsense that they push for, they've overplayed their hand and pushed it so heavily that they've turned normal people into these type of activists that you talked about, people who are now going to homeschool their kids or go to rallies or go to their school board meetings. Do you think that the left, their narrative is collapsing in a way that is going to potentially change the culture? Or do you think that it's so pervasive and so extraordinary that it's going to continue to do more and more damage?
I think it kind of remains to be seen. It really is up to it's up to the sane, normal people to take a stand and say we're not going to cooperate with this. And there's been signs, like at school board meetings, that people are willing to do that. But the reality is that you look around the country, and although most people seem to know how crazy this is, it's still happening. I mean, I think if you were to talk to almost anybody on the street, and especially if they thought, that they were talking privately to you, and you would ask them, should males be allowed to compete against females in women's sports? I mean, almost everybody. I don't think I've ever met in just normal everyday conversation a person who actually thinks that we should do that. And yet it's still happening though everywhere, because although people know how crazy it is, they've been berated into silence. And so all it takes is just to stop remaining silent. The other thing though is that, you've got two different groups here. You have the adults who were raised in a culture that wasn't perfect, but at least for most of their formative years, everybody knew that men were men and women were women at the very least. So you have those adults, but then you also have the children. And children, at a very young age, you can easily convince a 3-year-old that a magical fat man flies through the air and comes down a chimney to deliver presents, because children have no. They're not able to distinguish between fantasy and reality, and they're a lot easier to indoctrinate, the left has found. So I think that's their gambit right now, is they're saying, well, a lot of you older people, you're hopeless. We're not going to be able to get to you. But these kids, if we can shove this into their minds relentlessly through all of their formative years, then they're going to be ours. They're going to be sufficiently conditioned. And so that's why we have to prevent that.
Right. And I think we're seeing a great schism happen in America of people who support progressivism and progressive policy, and then those who want to maintain that traditional conservative roots that the country was founded on. And you guys made a statement, Daily Wire, in recently moving from Los Angeles to Nashville. I'm wondering, how has the move been, and how's your new state?
I think it's been great. Now, I actually, most everyone here, they came from Los Angeles. I was actually living in rural Pennsylvania in like a one stop sign town in Amish country. And so while everyone from Los Angeles, they're talking about how this is, it's a much more laid back environment and everything. For me, it's kind of the opposite adjustment. But overall, it has been, I think it's been great. And the people here are very, very welcoming. And it kind of shows you, I've traveled around the country, and, this is one place where most of the people you run into are friendly to us and are appreciative of the fact that we're here. And most people, even through the pandemic, seem to have retained their sanity. So overall, it's been a positive experience, I'd say.
What do you think about California? I mean, knowing that the Daily Wire was from here, do you think that a state like California is a lost cause, or somewhere like DC or New York, Chicago? Do you think that these places can be saved? Because, every single day we're on the fence here at PragerU about what we're supposed to do. If we're supposed to leave or if we're supposed to stay and fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a lost cause. At the very least, I don't think that we as conservatives should be trying to save it. I'm not really sure why we would. During the recall election and the recall effort in California, there were a lot of people very excited about the idea, well, can we get a Republican governor in California? And my point all along was, well, why would you want a Republican governor in California? Why would you want a Republican to be the one overseeing this mountain of filth and decay? Why would you want them to ultimately be the ones responsible for it? This is a mess that the Democrats have created. And unfortunately, lots of Democrat voters, this is apparently what they want, and they're getting it. And so if it's going to change, I think it's going to be up to the Democrats to do that. I don't think conservatives should expend much energy trying to save essentially the left from itself. I just don't think that that's energy well spent. I think it's probably a futile effort.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a burning house, what do? Do you try and put the house out with water from your sink, or do you leave the burning house? I mean, that's what it's really come down to.
It's very true. I want to switch gears here just a little bit because I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this. We ask all the married men that come on this program for advice on dating. We have a lot of young people who watch this show, and you put out a show yesterday describing the dating scene in America as a toxic wasteland. And every single week we do an advice column where young girls and guys write in about how much they're struggling with dating and in the current state of the dating scene right now. What is your advice to those people as a happily married man?
Just become monks, move into the woods and be hermits. No, I'm half kidding. I think if I was still single, that's probably what I would have done by now. I thank God that I'm married. It does feel, like I said yesterday, speaking of burning houses, as a married person, I feel like I just escaped the burning house and I'm turning back and watching it collapse behind me. But that's for people who are actually on the dating scene. I think there's a few things here. Maybe the number one most important thing is to go into dating with a goal in mind, with an end point in mind. And this has been the problem with, quote unquote, with modern dating, ever since it was first conceived. Because if you go back 100 years ago, nobody was talking about dating. There was courtship. That's what we would refer to. A lot of other cultures had even things like arranged marriages. This modern idea of dating is relatively just that, modern. And what distinguishes it from courtship is that with dating, there's no necessary endpoint in mind. You're just kind of like doing it. You're just sort of hanging out and talking to someone and then walking along randomly with no direction. And then eventually you just part ways. And so it's kind of doomed from the start. So I think you should go into it knowing that, listen, it doesn't mean that the first person I date, I'm going to marry them. But it's a tryout period. It's like a job interview. And I'm seeing if this is someone who I would want to spend the rest of my life with. And the moment that I determine that they aren't, then you part ways right then. Whether it's an hour into it or a year into it, the moment you realize I could not spend the rest of my life with this person because whatever the reason is, we don't share our fundamental values, whatever it is, that's when it ends right there. And then you move on, you try to find the next person. Now, I realize that it becomes more difficult, even if you go into dating with a goal in mind like that, and you have this kind of goal-oriented dating, it can be hard to find other people who are approaching it the same way. That's the challenge, but at least you know what you're looking for if you have that in mind.
Great. Yeah, guys, date with intention. I get so many girls who, like you said in this episode about West Elm Caleb, they were so upset that this man ghosted him. And it just is very clear that he had no intention of seeing a long-term relationship with you, and he probably let you off early.
If you get the cow and the milk for free, that's the way that you're going to act. I mean, there's a lot of cultural problems in America that make all of this happen. Matt, if you had to say the main values that are missing from America and the West in general today, what would you say are the things that we need to return to or the values that we need to restore?
All of them.
Yeah.
I think the main problem with I don't even know what we call it the main problem, but one of the fundamental problems with our culture is that there are no fundamental values at all, really. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we talk about is America going to break apart? Is there going to be a civil war? I don't think there's going to be a civil war, but I do think that in order to be, we're the United States of America, allegedly. In order to be really united, you have to be united around something. And in other cultures throughout history, they were, what bound them together was shared religion or ethnicity or those sorts of things. That's never been the case really in America. What's supposed to bind us together, unite us, is shared fundamental values. And but we don't really have that anymore. I think if you get 100 Americans into a room and ask them what do they care most about in life, you're not going to find any majority agreement at all. And that's I think that's sort of the basic problem in America.
Do you think there's a way to reinvigorate those virtues and something that we could do sooner rather than later? Because it seems like in the short term, things are going to get a lot worse before we see them get any better. What can you do now to reinvigorate those ideas?
Well, yeah, you keyed in on it when you said short term. I think that's kind of the point. And people don't like this answer when I give it. But and I'm not trying to be discouraging, although so much of what I say ends up being discouraging. That's not really my intention. It's just that I don't think there is a short-term solution. I don't think it exists. There's not a switch that we can flip that's going to make everything better. There's not a 5-point sort of plan, 5-step plan we can follow. I know we like to, as Americans, we always look for those kinds of answers with any problem that we're facing. This is one that doesn't have it. I mean, you look at how did we get to this point as a culture? How long did it take? It took generations to get here. So it's going to take generations to get out. And what that means is that if there's any kind of saving our civilization, reinvigorating our culture, anything like that, revival, I'm not going to be around to see it. You guys aren't going to be around to see it. My kids probably, sadly, won't be around to see it. Maybe my kids' kids will. And so we have to look at it from a long-term perspective. You know, we are rebuilding from the ground up, generationally, and that might seem depressing on one hand, but it's also sort of freeing on the other hand. Like just accept that you're in this fight for your whole life, and you're not going to see the end of it. And your job is just to fight. That's what it is, and embrace that and march forward, I guess.
Well, when you say discouraging, and you say it's going to take people so long, and this will be a next generation, not even next generation, the generation after that. Do you think that gives people really the motivation to go and fight? If they say this isn't even going to affect me in my lifetime or even my children's lifetime, what sort of, you know, motive is that for someone to go and fight and do things if it has no effect on their greater life?
Well, if we don't care about the future, if we don't care about our legacy, if we don't care about our families down, you know, in our down the line, in our progeny, if we don't care about those things, then there's just no hope at all. We might as well give up. I mean, it may seem discouraging to talk this way to people in modern culture where we're always looking, like I said, for instant solutions. We live in the microwave culture. We want dinner to be ready in 60 seconds or less. But it hasn't always been that way. I mean, there was a time, I think probably most of human history, when people were very motivated by, they were willing to suffer and die in their own lives for the idea of what the future might be, to build something better for their children and grandchildren all down the line. I mean, they were thinking thousands of years into the future is what they cared about. And that's the only way to have a thriving civilization, is if you care about the long-term future. If you don't, then there's simply no hope. So we have to look at it that way. We have to find a way to care about that, or I don't see any other hope.
I was on Twitter this weekend, and there are some people who I guess you could say are more liberal, and they say something that's kind of conservative, something that's been said by conservatives for months and months, and basically all these mainstream conservatives are jumping on and just congratulating these types of people. And it seems like for conservatives, like, we are not winning in that cultural war, and that is why we take these people who are liberals and jump on everything they say like it's the greatest thing ever. And so one of the final questions to you today is what can conservatives do better, and what should they really be aiming for? Because it seems like just the conservative messaging that you see on social media, that you see on these news stations, or even in the Republican Party, any of this, it's just not doing it for our country.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I mean, Barry Weiss was one example of real time, and she said some things about the pandemic or the lockdowns and all that. And conservatives were hailing her as a hero. I mean, we tend to do this. There was a time when we were hoisting Nicki Minaj up on our shoulders and saying she's our conservative champion. I don't even remember what she said now, but she said one thing, and we were so taken by it.
Something about getting COVID with like some medical thing with your testicles with COVID and questioning it, you know. Something very odd.
Something really important like that. But I think we have to be smarter about it, and there's nothing wrong with forming an alliance, a kind of strategic alliance with a person or a group of people, because you have one particular goal in mind that you're trying to accomplish. And so if one of them is to stop all the dystopian, draconian COVID measures, then absolutely, march alongside anybody else who shares that goal. But you have to understand that they're not part of the larger kind of struggle, and you have to be able to sort of compartmentalize it that way, which I don't think we've been very good at doing. I mean, talking about Dr. Phil, I've had feminists, like left-wing feminists, get in touch with me and are very happy about it. And they want to link arms and join forces to fight this fight on gender. And that's a very new experience for me, to have feminists saying anything nice to me whatsoever. And hey, if this is about rescuing a little bit of sanity when it comes to the topic of biological sex, I'll march alongside anybody for that. But I'm not under any illusion that we have some kind of partnership now that extends beyond this one issue.
Yeah, that's how it was for me this weekend. I spoke at that Defeat the Mandates rally in D.C., and obviously I'm more conservative, but the person who came after me was a Black Lives Matter guy. Obviously, I don't agree with basically anything this guy believes in, but he was against the mandates. And it's like, all right, for this one thing, we can put aside our differences here and say, all right, we are against these mandates, but in the greater picture, we have to understand that there is something bigger, and we're not just going to herald anyone who comes over to believe the things that we do as new heroes of our side or anything.
That's the right approach. It's just about being smart and strategic, which, like I said, as conservatives, we haven't always been the best at strategic thinking, I think, and we have to get better at that.
Fantastic. Well, Matt, I want to thank you so much for being on our show. We like to end this on a motivating note. So what's your message of motivation to the people, specifically the young people watching this, and how can people support you and find you?
Motivational message. I guess I should rap on something motivational after all the discussion.
Yeah, this is
right.
This is by far the hardest question Matt's had to answer in a long time.
That's always. Can you find something positive to say? That's always gonna be the hardest question.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll jump right over to where you can find me is on Twitter at Matt Walsh Blog, and you can find me on YouTube as well, Matt Walsh. And Daily Wire.
Fantastic.
That was pretty motivational.
Yeah.
Find me.
That was great.
And follow me, and we'll make it better tomorrow.
No, but people need to see the discouraging things. It's all the messaging about, oh, everything's fine, everything's positive. When you see that, then it makes you content. It makes you not want to fight. So the fact that you go out, I'm actually kind of on the same side as you, that it's like you need to show people the evil things or the bad things happening all the time so that they feel motivated to go and do something.
Amen.
Amen, brother. Hey, well, we appreciate you coming on the show. Everyone, make sure you're checking out Matt Walsh on Daily Wire, all of his social media, everything he's got going on.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Will and Amala Live. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for supporting us. I'm your co-host, Amala Epinobi, and here we have Mr. Will Witt. Will, thanks for being on today.
Great to be here. So, as I walked in, people said that I look different than usual.
Yeah, I've got to say, you're looking taller and wiser today.
How do you look wise?
There's just something about you.
White hair. I think that does it.
Guys, all jokes aside, we have one Mr. Dennis Prager in the house today. Woo! How amazing is that? And Dennis is going to be taking the place of William today because William is out and about in Europe. He's going to be, trouncing around, doing his thing,
Amazing
talking freedom.
They let him in.
I know. I wouldn't let him into my house even.
For different reasons. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the vaccination.
No.
So I was allowed in to Hungary last summer. There was a governmental permission I got.
Oh, really?
It's amazing that you need it. You'll love this. So after I spoke in Hungary for this conference, so you may not know this about me, but it's the only thing that I'm aware of that I brag about. I've been to 130 countries. I brag about that. No matter what happens, I drop that fact.
As you should.
It's reprehensible, but I do it. Anyway, so I had not been to Slovakia.
Okay.
I had been to Czechoslovakia, but I'm very honest. I'd only been to the Czech part. So I've never been to independent Slovakia.
Okay.
All right. So that borders Hungary. And I said to my wife, Sue, we got to drive to Slovakia. I have to add this country.
Right.
She said, great. She's a trooper. But how do you get into Slovakia? I don't have government invitation then. So this is precious. You'll love this because it's the only reason I'm telling you because it's so adorable, the story. So one of the people that I met at the conference in Hungary was a Slovak priest. It's a very Catholic country. A terrific guy, about 30, 35, maybe the maximum, total live wire character. And he said, so you got to visit me in Slovakia. I said, that's what I want to do. He said, okay, great. I said, there's a problem. You have to be vaccinated to get into Slovakia.
Uh-oh.
So he thought for a moment and he goes, well, I think I have a solution. He wrote me a letter on Archdiocese stationery that I was attending the funeral of my brother.
Oh,
my long-lost Slovak brother, whom I never knew I had. Is that I'm framing the letter.
Oh,
it's
my
in
gosh.
Slovak. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Wow. Did you have to shed a tear when you showed that to the government officials?
That is such a great question. Here's the joke. We drove by the border. They just waved to us. The whole thing was for naught.
So you're like thinking of your brother's age, what happened to him.
Yes, exactly. Do you know that this is really ironic? When I got home, I told my brother the story. He's older than I. He's my one sibling. And for whatever reason, he didn't find it funny that I attended his funeral. I think it's hilarious that I attended my living brother's funeral.
I could see a few reasons why one might not find that.
Apparently so. Okay.
I'm not one of those people, but I could see why that's why that might be the case.
You are not. That is right.
Now, speaking of vaccination, Dennis, you just set us up for a perfect segue. I want to show you this video out of Quebec. If you want to put those headphones on to hear what this young news anchor is saying. Here's a video out of Quebec News talking about what it's going to be like to go to grocery stores, specifically large grocery stores, because apparently the size of the grocery store matters in this case. Here we go.
Today, big box stores that have a footprint of 1,500 square meters or more are going to have to ask customers to show proof of vaccination. Now, pharmacies and grocery will be exempt from this. So if you're going into a Costco or a Walmart or something like that, where you might be going in to buy groceries or visit the pharmacy, in that case, an employee will have to be with that person as they walk through the store to make sure that they do not go and buy other products or other items that might be in the store. Now, today,
there you go. That's the clip. So you can't go to a large store without your vaccination card. And if you try to go grocery shopping without one, you will have a vaccine babysitter, essentially, that makes sure you only buy food and medicine.
Well, this past week, I read a piece in the Montreal Gazette by a Quebecer who visited Florida for vacation.
Oh, gosh.
And he wrote half in admiration and half in consternation. He could not acclimate to Florida's freedom.
See?
It's really, people should read it. People get used to being prisoners.
They really do. We've both spoken to On Me Park before, and she said the true feeling of oppression is not knowing that you're oppressed at all. And I think that's what people are experiencing right now. They're going, they're tripping over themselves to do exactly what the government says, and they don't see that as a taking of their freedom at all.
I wrote my column. I write my column every week, and it comes out Tuesday. So it came out yesterday, and I spoke about the irrationality of the believers in masks, like certainly outdoors, but anywhere. And I ended the piece with, here is the question that I pose. If people will obey, I don't remember the words I used. They were better chosen than I'm even quoting myself, but it's very important. If people are obeying irrational orders from the state, when will they stop?
Yep.
Is there any irrational order these people would disobey?
I would venture to say no.
I would venture to say no, too. And that's why I am scared of half of my Americans' behavior.
Yeah, and I think if 2 years ago you had told any average American, hey, we're going to be forcing you to get vaccinated to go to grocery stores or to go to the bank or to go to bars or restaurants, they would look at you and go, no, that's crazy. And I think the government and these agencies are really strategic in the way that they ask people to do the things that they ask. And there's something called a complacency ladder, which I've been reading about, is they know what the ultimate goal is. And they know the ultimate goal is to get everybody vaccinated and to eventually mandate that. But the way they get to that goal has to be very specific and very strategic. They have to start out small by saying, hey guys, I just want you to stay home. It's for your own safety. It's just for 2 weeks.
Flatten the curve.
Right. And then, hey, just one mask. Oh, wait, 2 masks. Oh, wait, get vaccinated. Oh, wait, get this second and third. And eventually people just get so used to being asked to do things that it doesn't matter.
Being told.
Yeah, being told.
They don't care about being asked.
Right. And they get so used to the intensity of the tellings going up and up and up and up that they don't even care anymore.
Well, Quebec is a frightening example.
Yes, it is. And we're seeing people in Canada start to retaliate. We spoke on the show earlier this week about truck drivers in Ottawa to the tune of 50,000 who are going to be descending on the Ottawa government in their trucks and saying, you know what, we're not going to work anymore.
Is that right?
That is.
Well, I'll tell you, that fills me with joy.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not effective, I had so given up on Canadians that this is a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah, and I think it sort of will be effective. I think when we were going through troubles with our truck driving industry, we had 80,000 trucks we were short, and that really had an effect on our economy. I can't imagine what 50,000 does for Canada.
Well, that's why I'm shocked at the number.
Right. So I think people are waking up.
By the way, it is another example. If this is true, it's another example that the upper classes are the tyrants,
mm-hmm.
and the middle class and lower class prefer liberty.
Yes,
it's a very interesting phenomenon, and I know this for my whole life because my field of study was communism. Incredibly,
mm-hmm.
given the world that we live in now,
mm-hmm.
and one observer noted all the support for Stalin in America and the West, and said it was the intellectuals who supported Stalin. The hard hats hated him.
Yep. Yeah, it's so true. And I think you can apply that to nearly every single social or political issue that our world is facing right now. I've recently been doing a lot of work with the LAPD, which you guys will see very, very soon. So many big projects happening with the police departments here in Los Angeles. But the intellectuals and the elites of the world are saying, let's usher in these zero bail policies and let's try to mitigate crime by decriminalizing things. And these are the ideas that they put out, that they put into policy, and that they're not held accountable for. And the people who get hurt the most are those lower income communities that they claim to be advocating for. I want to show you another video, Dennis. Here is Michael Rappaport, which we all know him for his acting and his somewhat foul mouth, witnessing a shoplifter right in front of his very eyes just steal things and walk right past security. And this is in New York City. Let's take a look.
Yo, I'm looking at this dude smoke. Yo, this dude is, I can't believe I'm seeing this. This month, yo, this guy just filled his 2 bags up with everything in Rite Aid right here on 80th and 1st Avenue. He's walking down the street like is Gucci. Look at me in my face like what's good. I was watching him the whole time. My man just went Christmas shopping in January. He had the condoms, the shampoo.
Yep. Right in front of his very eyes at a Rite Aid in New York City. And this is happening in nearly every major city in America because of what they're doing with policy and on crime.
There are 2 ways, maybe 3, of stopping reducing crime.
Mm-hmm.
One is police catching them and stopping them and arresting them.
Right.
Another is elevating the moral level of your society. And the third way, which is the left's way, is to redefine crime.
Mm-hmm.
If it isn't a crime, it didn't take place.
Right.
To them, that's not a crime.
And it's just crazy to me that this can happen. And you can see all these videos. Like, this is one of millions of videos of people going out and doing this. And people will see this and progressives will see this and still advocate for that same policy. What do you think is the block, the guard or the wall in their brains that they don't see the connection?
The left, as I have said all of my life, unlike the Judeo-Christian world,
mm-hmm.
does not divide the world between good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
But between rich and poor and black and white, so that there is no universal standard of right and wrong or good and bad. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're rich, bad if you're poor. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You are good if you're poor, bad if you're rich. You You are good if you're not white, bad if you're white. That is the moral calculus of the left. They're sick. They're destructive. It's nihilistic. It's chaos.
Yeah.
But that's what they believe. And that's what you're taught at school.
Right. Yeah. I was taught that in several occasions, and especially in my young life. And it's so crazy to have.
You should mention that regularly.
Yeah.
The moral world in which you were raised. I think it's critical for people to hear.
It's insane for me to think about that I ever thought that way back in less than 3.5 years ago.
Yes,
I would have been screaming at you.
I know.
I'm curious, what is your prescription for elevating the morals of a society? How does that work?
That my life has been devoted to that, answering that. And I have a three-word answer. The 10 Commandments. My life is in a nutshell has been dedicated to promoting the God-given 10 Commandments, which was taken as a given all through Western history as being God-given. If they're not God-given, they're irrelevant, because what man gives, man can erase. And I keep saying, you want to defund the police? There's a very simple way. Have everybody live by the 10 Commandments. You won't need any police.
Sure. I wish we would see a world where that was
That's
the
all we
case.
need.
I know.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, it really isn't. It is actually quite simple.
Quite simple.
And it's very unfortunate. I think we're seeing a lot of progressives. We saw it of San Francisco Mayor London Breed roll back her defund the police rhetoric when she saw how bad her city was getting, and when she specifically started to see it in her own neighborhood and in her own backyard. And that, I think, is so emblematic of leftism, is that they care only for themselves, and they sit in their ivory towers and advocate for policies that hurt lower income communities while claiming to be the champions of these communities.
The question is, why do those communities vote for people who don't give a damn about them?
It's so...
I blame them as much as I blame the politicians. If you vote for these people, you deserve the consequences. And by the way, it's true for me.
Yep.
If I vote Republican, I deserve the consequences of voting Republican.
Yeah. I'm just curious as to why people still do it. Are they just simply not doing their due diligence? Have they been fed the same narrative that I've been fed?
They were fed the same narrative you were.
Yeah.
One party's for the little guy and one is for the big guy,
Yep.
even though the big guy votes Democrat. It's just not even true.
Yeah. And it's
the
such
richest, what is it? Something like 9 of the 10 wealthiest zip codes vote Democrat. Now, why would that be?
Right. Can somebody explain that to me?
Yeah.
And why is it when these major activists who build the bulk of their career and their capital on the backs of lower income people, why is it when they get that money and that capital, they move to high income white neighborhoods? Can somebody explain that to me either?
Yeah.
Obama, Patrisse Cullors, the founder of BLM, all of them doing the exact same thing.
Why do Californians who vote left go to Florida?
Exactly. I hope my beautiful state, my beautiful home state of Florida, stays like it is and does not shift. And I'm very curious to see what happens.
What city were you from?
I was from a little town. Well, maybe I won't say my little town. I will say...
outside of what big town?
Outside of Orlando.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Central Florida.
Yes. Central Florida, smack dab in the middle, really rural, conservative. And now a lot of people, our population has just skyrocketed from people moving there from places like California and New York. So I'm so curious.
Had you bought a hut, you'd be wealthy.
Right. I know. The property is just crazy. The market's crazy over there.
I interviewed on my radio show just today Peter Schweizer, best-selling author, and he has a new book on how the elites support communist China. And I always ask these people, so where are you now, my guests? Tallahassee. And so how long are you living there? 25 years. So I said, you don't really have to write any books. You're just wealthy, having a 25-year-old house in Tallahassee.
Yeah, you just have to sit and bask.
That's right, yes. Take a bath all day.
Oh, my gosh. If only I had bought a small plot of land in Florida. Anything. A water fountain in Florida. I wish.
Right.
It's a regret that I will live with for the rest of my life.
If that's your biggest regret, you'll have a great life.
I do have a great life. I think we both do. Before we move on,
true.
That is true. Before we move on to another subject matter, guys, I want to let you know we are streaming on another channel. It's called Will and Amala Live. You guys said you were getting too many notifications on the PragerU channel. You wanted separate clips of our show, and you wanted exclusive content. You asked, you've received. We have Will and Amala Live, the channel. Please go subscribe over there. And eventually, we're just going to be exclusively streaming on there. So join the club, guys. It's free. It's free of charge, and it's very, very easy to do. All you got to do is click that subscribe button, and then click the notification bell so you can be notified every single day when we go live at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Now, let's talk about...
By the way, having said that, you did move from Florida to California.
I did.
There are 11 people who have done that. You are one of them.
Do I get like a badge or a reward?
No, well, I'll tell you what you get. You get a thank you note from U-Haul.
Oh, I know. They really should. I should have been compensated, honestly.
I thought, I'm sure this is a fairy tale, but I did hear that they were paying people to take U-Haul trucks back to California.
I'm quite sure that's true.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure that's true. They were, they were really...
Because they're all in one direction.
Right.
They need them back.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. Yeah, I will say I did not know what Los Angeles was like before I moved here. Had I known that or done even the slightest bit of research, would I have been swayed? I don't know.
Let me tell you this, which you'll just have to take my word for it. When I moved here at your age in the 70s, it was awesome.
Yeah, I bet.
It was the most exciting place in America.
Mm-hmm.
They crushed it. The left, remember my motto, the left ruins everything it touches?
Yes.
L.A. is an example.
Okay, well, let's actually talk about LA then. How do you feel about the city of LA, the state of California at large? Is it savable? This is a big question.
I don't know. The most honest answer is I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I try to be an optimist about things.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't try to be either.
Sure.
I just know what I have to do, and that is fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the future brings. Right now, it looks dark.
Right.
I mean, it's so overwhelmingly left-wing. It's 2-1. I mean, which is a staggering ratio. But let's put it this way. I'm not optimistic, but I certainly haven't given up trying to fight.
You heard it here first, guys. Oh, I can tell you, one of the questions that we get asked the most is, are you and Dennis going to be leaving Los Angeles? Leave Los Angeles. Leave Los Angeles.
I get that all the time.
What's your answer to that?
Well, the first answer, there are a few, is there are too many people I love here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make something clear about L.A., and that is it's such a large arena, and there are an enormous number of fantastic people here.
Yep.
I just want people to understand, this is the birthplace of PragerU. This is the birthplace of the Daily Wire. This is the birthplace of Pajamas Media. You go down the list, and it's either the birthplace of the founders or of the place. This is when next to blacks, the most reliable left-wing vote are Jews.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a committed Jew, and I gave a speech at a big synagogue a few years ago. It's on YouTube. Your people should watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Prager Synagogue. Los Angeles. I don't know how you'd find it. I think that would be on YouTube. It'll pop up. 1,200 Jewish conservatives showed up. That's a lot of people.
That's quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they came up just to support you and listen to what you had to say.
And not just support me. I have to tell you, I've given thousands of speeches. This is in the top 10 in terms of the audience going nuts. They were jumping up and down most of the time. There was no reason to sit because they would jump up again.
Right.
They were so thrilled having me speak about the left as a Jew the way I did, and meeting all these other Jews who felt like them.
It's an amazing thing to sort of find an oasis in a desert.
That's right. So they exist there. I founded a synagogue, which I love, and I go to every Saturday. I don't want to abandon it.
Mm-hmm.
My close friends, most of my closest friends are here. I have a whole world that I have built here. PragerU is here. There are a lot of good reasons.
Sure.
There are a lot of great reasons to leave.
Yep.
I acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think if you had asked me a little while ago, hey, here's a ticket to Florida, you're going to move, I would have taken it. But I think there's something to be said about your work being more fulfilling in a place where it is needed most, and your work being more fulfilling.
That was my other reason.
Yeah,
and that's exactly right.
And especially in a place where people don't accept the work that you're doing. And I think it gives you so much drive. Yeah.
Well, by the way, as soon as I say it, your listeners will and viewers will acknowledge it, but people don't think about this. There are more Republicans in California than in any other state.
Right.
Simply because it's so large.
There you go, guys. Think about that. There are people here. Don't just abandon us. Don't abandon us. And if you do leave the state, I understand. If your house is burning down and you don't want to put out the fire from the inside of the house. Okay, totally get that. Keep fighting, though. Don't just leave and go, I'm in a conservative oasis.
Right,
and
I'm in Tennessee,
right.
and life is good.
Yeah, back to normal, guys. Back to your regularly.
So, by the way, it's I think from California, it's Texas, not in order. Florida, Texas, Tennessee.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep. I think Idaho's up there, too. Taylor, do you know where?
Oh, well, everything's up
Arizona.
there.
Yeah,
There's no question. Yeah.
Everything's...
Well, not New Jersey, but...
Right. Not New Jersey. Good Lord, not New Jersey. Now, let's talk about, we're going to shift gears a little bit, talk about a field where this is really necessary, the work that we're doing, and that is in the American education system. We've covered the education system all the time, specifically public schools, in regard to the teachers' unions and critical race theory and gender theory that our kids are being indoctrinated with. But now we have a new vessel for doing that. And I think if you go on the internet, if you go on social media, if you're listening to the news, here's something you hear, some words you hear all the time: misinformation, credibility, fact checking. And for me, all those words do not speak to objectivity at all. They speak to bias. And here's what's happening. So the American Federation of Teachers, which is the second largest teachers union in the United States, has now decided to partner itself with NewsGuard. NewsGuard is famous for going around to websites and judging their credibility based on objectivity. No. Based on liberal bias? Absolutely. So now you have a massive teachers union who's going to be pairing with NewsGuard to develop websites and find curriculum sites for students. What do we think is going to happen there with that partnership? I can imagine it won't be good.
It will give the teachers unions the fig leaf they want to censor anything they don't agree with.
Right.
This is all this is about.
Yep.
NewsGuard is as reliable as any of the other famous so-called fact checkers.
Exactly.
They exist in order to debunk the right.
Yep. And that's what we're going to see.
Delegitimize. They don't actually debunk, to delegitimize.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a good thing to state. Yeah, it's not actually debunking us and what we have to say and the values that we're espousing. It's just to promote their own political bias. And for those of you who don't know, PragerU has been in a battle with NewsGuard for quite some time. I want to show you this website. If you go to prageru.com/NewsGuard, you can check out and go through all the receipts of the back and forth that we've had with NewsGuard. NewsGuard labeled PragerU's website as being unreliable and lacking of credibility, saying that we have consistent, extreme bias on our website and that we lack factual data. Now, you can go through and look through the email receipts of our CEO going back and forth with NewsGuard, trying to figure out why they labeled our website as unfactual, to no avail, of course, because so long as we're conservative, we will be censored and knocked down as being uncredible by these sites. But this is what we're dealing with. NewsGuard thinks that sources that tell you to look at the 10 Commandments and lead a better lifestyle and date with intention and to think about your morals and values is somehow lacking in credibility. What do you think that's going to do with the teachers' curriculums in your kids' schools? Which is why we really need to look at our public institutions and our public schooling system. And what the prescription of reform for that is, I have no idea.
Yeah, take your kids out of school.
Yeah.
That's the prescription.
So what you guys can do is actually go and sign this petition for our NewsGuard at prageru.com if you'd like. But
I lost your computer screen for a second, so if you could unplug and plug it back in, maybe.
Sure. I will plug it back in so you guys can see it. So I'll get your take on this, Dennis. Every time we talk about public schools, Will gets on this program and says, abolish the public schools, which is not the vein of thinking that I tend to fall under. But I'm curious what your thoughts are.
What do you fall under?
I fall under I can see the sentiment behind saying abolish the public schools, but I think there just needs to be a considerable amount of reform in public schools. I think abolishing the public schools is going to lead to a slew of other problems that I think we don't think about when we look at all the things that public schools provide outside of actual education. So kids having a place to go away from home, mental health facilities in public schools, kids having food.
Look, that's why I asked you before I answered.
Yeah.
Because I knew you'd have an intelligent response.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm thinking because the issue was so complex and I want to make it as simple as possible. The fact remains, right now, kids are worse off in big city schools, private or public. Private are no better. I read on my show today a mother whose 13-year-old daughter said she was a boy, and she took the child out of the school that she was in because all they kept doing was affirming her transition at the age of 13. Oh, you're a boy, you're a boy, you're a boy. And so she took the child to a Catholic school. The Catholic school did exactly what the public school did.
So I've been hearing.
Exactly. Affirmed the daughter's transition and yelled at the parents for in any way saying to the daughter, you're a girl. Anyway, the problem is far greater than public schools. That's number one.
Yes.
So what do you do? I don't think they're reformable. Reform would mean an entire new world of teachers. Most teachers believe what they say when they say America is systemically racist. When they say there's no such thing as a boy or a girl, it is completely subjective.
Sure.
These things they believe. So they believe they'll die if they don't go, if they have classes, and it's better to deprive children of school because the teacher thinks they'll die. Not one teacher in Sweden died. Sweden never closed the schools for kids under 16. Not one day.
And we have so many examples of this happening, and I'm just curious to see what I've really liked is what I've seen out of Florida. We all know Florida is just like the beacon of American values right now, so I'm constantly looking to them to see what they're doing. They've been moving towards something called curriculum transparency, which means your school year doesn't start without the entire curriculum of the year or of each semester being put out publicly for the other educators and for the other parents to see what is being taught in your schools. And I think that's a small bit of reform, which is something quite easy to do.
No, I agree. How about this? I taught at college and at high school. And I remember in college, kids would come over and say, is it okay if we record your class?
Yeah.
And I remember my instinct was, why are you even asking? Why would I object? What do I want to hide what I'm saying to you? I'm dying for you to get this out of the classroom.
Right.
But the teachers on the left don't want to be recorded.
Yeah.
That means, I think, while I said that they believe what they say, I think they also know that there's something wrong with what they're saying. Lest it get out to adults. See, you could say anything to a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old, and get away with it.
Sure.
Anything. That kids look at adults, whatever they say, they look at them with awe. But you can't get away with it if there are adults listening.
Yes.
Teachers, college teachers want to be banned recording them. Why would that be?
Yeah.
Because they know it's indoctrination, not education.
There has to be, they have to have an inkling. They have to have a feeling that is what they're doing, and what they're doing is wrong. Why else?
Otherwise, why would you not want it made known to the world?
Sure.
Why aren't you proud of what you're saying?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why this is really a brilliant move for conservatives pushing what we're calling curriculum transparency, because anybody who comes out and says, I don't want my curriculum to be transparent should raise a massive red flag.
Yes.
Massive.
Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's talk about something that's been trending today. I went on Twitter a couple hours ago, and the phrase black woman was trending. And I thought, okay, that's very strange. Why is this trending? And the news behind this is Justice Breyer of the Supreme Court, it's been announced that he is planning to retire. And if you recall, our current president made a promise that if he had the chance to put somebody in the Supreme Court, it would not be somebody with merit who's been known to be proficient in the law and the Constitution. Instead, that it would be somebody who is black and female, because that's what's important. So now people are speculating, who is the next Supreme Court justice going to be? And is it going to be a black female? And is it, in fact, more important to be black and female than to have merit? If so, my life is fantastic today because it's...
Well, you have both, or all three.
It's good to be me.
Look, I have done this at speeches of large groups of conservatives, like 1,000 people. So I'd say, raise your hand. I'm going to give you two options. So wait till you hear both options. And one is a Supreme Court of 9 white, Christian, male, heterosexuals on the left, 9 black, female, lesbian, atheists on the right.
I'm going to go ahead and raise my
Exactly.
hand for that
Every
one.
single hand,
Yes.
1,000 hands go up.
Yep.
We don't give a damn.
Right.
Except about your values.
Yep. And they
You
will...
have 9 conservative blacks on the Supreme Court. By far, the favorite Supreme Court justice of 99% of conservatives is Clarence Thomas.
Exactly. We don't care. And there's one side of the country that cares more about your skin color than anything else.
Yes, and that's called racism, as I've understood it.
It's called racism,
Yes.
guys. Yeah, I recently went on, of all networks, a network called Black News Channel, because that's necessary. And I went on a show that's hosted by a man by the name...
That's necessary.
That's necessary because I don't want my news if it's not black, ladies and gentlemen. So I went on the show. The host of the show is Mark Lamont Hill, and we got on to debate critical race theory.
They invited you on?
They did invite me on. So Mark Lamont Hill, I will give him credit where it's due. He is a leftist that is known for bringing conservatives on his show to debate. So they did bring me on.
Oh,
and it was
send
great.
Him my name.
Oh, I absolutely
Does he have
will.
lights?
Yes.
Good.
Anybody and everybody, I will. So I got on with Mark Lamont Hill to debate critical race theory in our schools and whether or not it is being taught in schools, whether or not it's necessary. And we got to the topic of representation, which is why Black Woman is trending. It's because people want to argue that they need representation. And Mark made the comment of, Amala, you're a black female conservative. It's such a rare thing. You have now opened up a window of representation for all these other young black females in the world. And my response to that, and I think something that we should all think about, is that if you need to look at your TV and feel represented, there's something wrong with the way that you were taught, and there's something wrong with the way that you think. If I turn on the news and I see a table full of white news anchors, that should not tell me that I can't be a news anchor. And if it does, it's just lack of reasoning on my part. There is no need to have somebody represent you based on your skin color and your race. It does not speak to their merit. It does not speak to their character. It does not speak to their ideals. This could be a completely opposite person from me. I could, in fact, think that this person is evil. But because they share my skin color and my gender, I'm supposed to identify with them in some way, shape, or form. It's a ridiculous piece of logic. Ridiculous.
It is such a joy to hear you. It just is.
Thank you.
This notion, well, you need somebody who looks like you.
Right.
I can't think of a sillier notion. So let me just tell you my story. So I grew up as an Orthodox Jew. In my home, we wore all the time, we wore a yarmulke, right? Kippah, skull cap, whatever term you want to use. Who exactly did I look like? Zero. There wasn't a public figure who wore a yarmulke. The only one who did, and it cracked me up as a kid, was the Pope. Because in my house, though we were Orthodox Jews, we watched the Christmas Mass from the Vatican every Christmas Eve. And I remember looking at my father and go, look, Dad, he's wearing a yarmulke. But somehow I didn't turn out Catholic.
Right.
You're entirely right. What do I care?
Right.
I have to look. You're pathetic.
Yes.
You're right. What you said was in effect, there is something wrong with you.
There is.
You have such a small self-image.
Yep.
I must look like that news anchor, that senator, that whatever.
Yes. And it's just amazing because it takes away your agency and it takes away the very spirit of being an American. The people that we hold up as heroes are people that crashed through not having representation and said, you know what, I don't care that I don't see people like me. I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm going to be an innovator and I'm going to say what I think. Yet we think that handcuffs us from doing what we want to do in this country. And it's just a ridiculous argument. And to go and then teach that to children and say that if you don't see yourself, there's a problem is... Oh, it's just such a horrible thing to do.
That's right. It is.
It really, really is. Let's move on here. You guys might have heard that they're going to be making a live action Snow White. And some of you, there's so many leftist arguments against Snow White. We'll get to one here in a bit. The left used to be mad about Snow White just for the simple name, Snow White. That was offensive. Then the left got mad that the Prince Charming kissed Snow White to literally bring her back to life because it lacked consent. So that was the next quip about Snow White. Now we have an actor by the name of Peter Dinklage, who is known. He's very famous. He was in Game of Thrones. He's going to be in that new movie Serrano. He is known as a member of the dwarfism community. He is a little person. And now he has his criticism of Snow White, and it is the horrifying depiction of the 7 dwarves. So he took to Twitter, made a big stink about how he's fought for his representation as a little person in media and entertainment, and how dare they make a live action Snow White that paints this caricature of dwarfism. And Disney, you know how it used to be a woke mob? A woke mob is what got you to bow down and apologize. Now it's one singular person. Disney has responded and said that they are now going to be talking to the dwarfism community to make a better depiction of the 7 dwarfs.
Every time I hear the word community, I know it's
yes.
a left.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Wait, can I maybe you can or maybe you cannot answer the question. So I still don't know. What's his objection?
I don't, maybe that so each of the dwarves has these kind of characteristics, like you've got dopey and sleepy and all of these things. And I think it just paints them as sort of these like mindless characters. And he doesn't want members of his community to be depicted that way. So it's very, very interesting. I guess he's saying they're not well-rounded enough characters.
So listen to this. Now that I think of it, you ever hear the Three Stooges?
Yes. Uh-huh.
They were not known for being brilliant. They're not their characters.
No, they were.
And I just was reading about them. All 3 were Jews. So I think that we should object.
To this dwarfism.
Jews depicted as stooges.
Okay, so you're siding with Peter Dinklage here.
No, I'm agreeing with him. I mean, here, if you really search, everybody could be offended at all times.
That is true. That is true. And that's the thing here. Even if this was some sort of a substantive objection against Snow White, what are you offended by?
Exactly.
The threshold for sensitivity.
It's a bloody fairy tale.
I know. Oh my gosh. The threshold to be offended in this country is just so low. It's so low.
It's so low. It has a horrible effect on the individual.
Yes.
See, forgetting politics. If you walk around thinking you're constantly being hurt, there is something wrong with you.
Yep.
Forget race. Forget gender. Just in your family.
Yep.
If you're a permanent victim, you're the problem.
Yes. And you should reevaluate that. And you need some life changes there, because the world does not really change all that much. Although they want to sort of bend it down to their whims, it's really not going to work. And these things are going to continue to be creative. And to those of you, there's probably very few leftists that watch this program, but if you are leftists watching this program right now and you support things like cancel culture and canceling movies and companies, I urge you to think about this. If you support cancel culture now, it will be coming for you later, because the moral musings that we have now are so so vastly different from the ones that we had even 5 years ago. Did you ever think that saying the term boy, girl, man, or woman would get you canceled? And now it does. So I can't wait for when the people who are leftists right now supporting cancel culture, I can't wait for you to have kids. And when your kids are 15 and 16 and they come up with their own offensive terms, like saying that the grass is green is offensive, and they cancel you, it's going to eventually come for you because it doesn't stop here.
Right. There's a biblical phrase, a land that devours its inhabitants.
Yes.
That's the left.
Yes.
All the folks who supported the Bolsheviks and the Russian Revolution, nearly all of them, ultimately got killed by Stalin.
They eat themselves.
They eat themselves.
Alive. Alive. And we have one more example of that before we get to our final TikTok reaction from Dennis. Now,
I'm worried about the TikTok reaction.
It's going to be an interesting one, and it is about teaching. So it's a subject matter that we've already touched on today, and it will concern you. But this is not a space that I think either of us are in. Do you watch The Real Housewives?
Well, it depends which city.
Salt Lake City.
I bet you're surprised.
I am surprised by that answer.
Listen to this. So I am very curious.
Uh-huh.
And I never watch never watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say one shouldn't. I just don't. So however, I spend about 100 days a year in hotel rooms.
Mm-hmm.
On occasion, I will turn the TV on, and I see something famous that I know nothing about, and I'll tune it in. So once, I don't remember which city it was, Real Housewives of, and I'll tell you what struck me, and maybe this is an unfair thing. First, I was bored extremely rapidly.
As you should be, yes.
Is that right?
That's fair. That's fair.
The conversations were so vapid that I said, it pains me that this is interesting. I wouldn't mind if it was lurid. I wouldn't mind anything, but it's not interesting, let alone deep. But anyway,
yes.
All right, so what's the story?
So the story is here. Out of all cities, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, which I didn't even know existed. I didn't know Salt Lake City needed its own Real Housewives franchise. But we have a woman by the name of Jenny Nguyen, and she was a Real Housewife of Salt Lake City. But it happens that Jenny Nguyen did...
She's Vietnamese, right?
I believe so. It doesn't stipulate in this article.
I recall there was a story about her, but I don't remember it. Go on.
So this will be... They have now ceased filming with Jenny because she has been found guilty in the court of public opinion, which happens so often. What is her offense? Her offense is going on the internet and speaking out against the George Floyd riots and trying to deter rioters from burning down buildings or beating police officers. So now she has been canceled by the woke mob, but here's the spin, and it's the spin that we can almost always expect. Jenny has posted an apology for this. Her apology reads as follows: I want to acknowledge and apologize for my deleted Facebook post from 2020 that resurfaced today. At the time, I thought I was speaking out against violence. Little hint, she was. But I have since learned how offensive and hurtful my words were. It's why I deactivated that account more than a year ago and why I continue to try and learn about perspectives different from my own. I regret those posts and am sincerely sorry for the pain that I've caused.
What did she post? Do you have it at all?
I'll try to find the specific post here. Let's see.
She wanted people to stop rioting?
Yep, she spoke out against the riots, and that was her offense.
That's right. Well, because again, we're not talking protesters, we're talking rioters.
Yep. Here's some of her posts. She posted a meme that said, if you follow the police orders, you won't get shot. Some might say that's a true statement. She also posted another sort of paragraph saying, I'm sick of people saying cops need more training. You had 18 years to teach your kid it's wrong to loot, steal, set buildings ablaze.
Oh, my God. Was she?
Yeah.
See, here's the thing that people don't understand. You gain nothing by apologizing if you didn't do something wrong.
Yep.
If you did something wrong, you should apologize.
Yep.
They will not reinstate her in the program.
Nope.
And she looks like a wimp. So she has given the cancel culture a victory.
Mm-hmm.
She has looked foolish because nobody believes she did anything wrong.
Yep.
And she won't get reinstated. So apologizing when you didn't do something wrong is a huge error.
Huge. It's like the worst mistake you can make.
Worst.
Yes, because the leftists that come after you now feel emboldened to come after the next
There's
10
blood
people.
in the water.
Yep. They go, we came after this woman, we attacked her, and she kneeled down. So now I'm going to do that 10 times harder to the next person.
Exactly.
Don't apologize to the mob, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
I can't tell you that enough. It will do nothing for you.
Right.
And if you stand up for what you believe and what you said, you'll get more support than you ever had before.
That's right.
That's what will happen. Yeah, I went initially and I saw this story and I reached out to Jenny and sent her an Instagram message saying, hey, we'd love to support you. We'd love to have you on the show. And then boom, there goes the apology. What can you do with that now? There's nothing you can do with that now.
Well, it's still, I hope you have her on anyway.
I know. Just to discuss that. And I can understand the pressure that one would be under to apologize.
Anyway, to be a Vietnamese member of the Salt Lake City Real Housewives group, it must be so difficult and challenging.
Right. The representation that they just got rid of. Somebody should come after them and try to cancel them for canceling an Asian woman. That's a minority, according to the left.
Well said.
So, they do eat themselves in the end, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Dennis, one more thing here.
Yeah.
Let's get your take on this video. You're going to need your headphones for this one. I think you can already get a view of what this video might be about just by looking at this young woman. But here we go. Here's what she has to say.
So I'm not allowed to be out as trans non-binary at school. Do not come up in my comments saying that I am allowed, because I'm not. I live in Louisiana and it sucks here. So of course my response to this is to be as obnoxiously queer as possible. So I've got my rainbow hair with leopard print. I've got my rainbow glasses. Sometimes I wear pins too with various rainbow things on them. I don't have any today. I just have my COVID sticker. I wear things that do not match at all. Basically, my goal is to look like a unicorn threw me up. If I can't do that, what's the point? So I'm not allowed to be
so that's the video. For those of you who don't understand leftist language, this is a trans non-binary, which is amazing to me that you can be transgendered but then deny the binary system of gender. Somehow that's plausible.
I guess theoretically, because your point is excellent, she has transitioned to no sex.
Yeah. I don't, and I'm thinking this is, I can't tell if this is a biological male or a female. Taylor,
Correct. So that was well done.
Right.
On their part.
Right. So since they feel like they cannot come out to their class, have decided to color their hair and wear rainbow on their body and wear their COVID vaccination, because that somehow communicates their sexuality and orientation.
Okay, so here's an interesting bet that one might want to make for all of your viewers and listeners. If I gave you $100 to $10 bet, I say they come from a dysfunctional home. You have to say they come from a functional, two-parent, stable, loving home. Would you take the bet at a 10-to-1 odds? Or are you willing to lose $10?
It's definitely a dysfunctional home. It's definitely.
No, see, what has happened in society, and I'm old enough to see this transition, the troubled soul 50 years ago was regarded as a troubled soul, was pitied, could seek help. Today, the troubled soul is honored.
Yep.
The troubled soul is a cause,
yep,
not a trouble. And nobody benefits from that.
They really don't. And I can't think of a single marker that where affirming this and validating this makes it better. And anybody who has an argument for that, please come on the show and please give me that argument. I would love to hear it, because I have yet to hear one that substantiates this sort of behavior. And to be an educator who is far more obsessed with your own self-identity, if we can even call it identity, because I think it really lacks individualism to consign yourself to a sexual orientation or a specific gender identification. I think that takes away from your individuality. But to be a teacher who is more obsessed with that than educating your kids is very concerning.
That's right.
Very concerning. There's an aura of narcissism.
Aura.
Yeah. Just I'm getting hints of narcissism.
Right, exactly.
In this particular wine. So yeah, the more and more that I see videos of educators like this, the more I cement what I already believed, and that is that I will homeschool my kids.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I'll come in and periodically teach them.
That would be fantastic.
Deal.
I will have the best taught kids in America. If that's the case. Dennis, okay, we've talked about a lot of stories today. I like to end on a hopeful note, or at least a motivating, encouraging note. Do you have anything to say to the people watching today?
Oh, on a motivating note?
Motivating note. Let's end happy.
Well, I don't know if this will end happy, but it might be motivating. I have come to realize something, and I'll just say an interesting sidebar for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I have always, like you, wanted to understand life. I was a hit, if I may use such a silly term, at your age as well, which is very rare, and I was very grateful, as you are, and you deserve it, and you're in no way arrogant about it, and I salute you, and I wasn't either. To be honest, I just thank God all the time for my good fortune. So I have spent a life trying to understand life. And I'm amazed that big revelations come to me even now. I mean, I didn't know that 35 years ago. That's how I think. So here's one that has hit me. It was always brewing, but now I know it, and much more clearly. Virtually all good things are done by outliers. You're an outlier. I was an outlier. I still am, basically. Yeah. Now, some bad things are done by outliers too.
Sure.
But all the good that is achieved is done by the one who doesn't march to the beat of everybody's drum. And so I hope this motivates those of you, those following you, listening now, watching now. If you want to be popular, that is not the same thing as wanting to do good. You have to choose which it is that you most want.
Brilliant. Beautiful. There's no better way to close out the show than that. And when you do that, you will have so much support, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the irony.
That is the irony. So don't be scared of it. Don't let people, let you be driven by fear. Don't let that happen to you. And speak out and stand up. We will be here to support you. PragerU will be here to support you. And again, you can support us by going to prageru.com/donate. All of our videos are free, and they're free because you support the work that we do. So guys, that's our show for today. Dennis, thank you for being on. It's always a pleasure. It's always amazing. Guys, let me go through my spiel, my last 4-minute spiel for you guys of all the things I would like to ask you to do. So here we go. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single day when we go live. What time is that? It's 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Leave a comment down below. What are you going to do with your kids in schooling? Do you have kids? Are they already out of school? If they are, you're probably lucky. Are you going to be homeschooling, private schooling, public schooling? Let me know. And what is your prescription for what we do with schools? Do we abolish them? Do we reform them? Is there really a greater of these two options? Guys, we also have a new channel. It's called Will and Amala Live. That is Live. Go and subscribe there. We have exclusive content going there. We have video clips going there, and we're going to be exclusively streaming from there sometime in the near future. You already got that channel to 5,000 subscribers in less than a week. So thank you guys so much for the support that you've given us. Bye, guys.